Hey guys, so do you have any idea what we are looking at there? I think this is footage from Nate Eaton. Who else could it be? But do you have any idea who is that woman that is kind of in disguise, trying to enter the court without being recognized? Any ideas who that is? What do you guys think? Jenny says, the first live I've caught in months. Good to have you here. Erica says, hello, everyone, or hello, critical thinkers. Any idea who that strange person in disguise is? Well, there's the answer. It's Melanie Gibb entering the courthouse yesterday with Rexburg Police Detective Stubbs. And so today it is quite different. It is quite a different situation. We got to hear most of the day from someone that I would say I didn't really know very much about. Zulema. He was actually married to Alex Cox for, I think, 2 weeks or something before he died. And so, a lot like Melanie, she's kind of got the inside track. But although Melanie was sort of an organizer and a gatherer of the sort of participants, Zulema was, you kind of get the feeling like on the ground, like if you wanted to join this cult, if you sort of put up your hand and said, me, I also want to be part of this, what would you expect it to look and feel like? You get a very strong sense of that from Zulema. The day was basically two aspects. I thought the beginning was full of bombshells. It was Charles VALLOW's iCloud that had been accessed, and it showed just a heck of a lot of damning texts, basically accusing Laurie of infidelity, telling her how, you accuse me of cheating on you, but you cheating on me. She actually found I think one of the most astonishing texts in a way, actually it's an email, was one where Laurie kind of impersonated someone else, basically saying that she wanted to, I think, have Chad ghostwrite a book for her. And anyway, she was reaching out to Chad under sort of false pretenses. And also something about Chad staying over. But anyway, Charles found this email and he basically went ballistic. He was going to threaten to tell Tammy, and then he actually did make contact, I think, with Chad. Do you know what? Does your wife know what you're doing? So you can imagine how Charles emerged as a threat to Laurie and Chad, and so what happened to Charles. So we're going to look at some of those texts. We're going to look at some of that. Zulema, I think the most shocking moment in a way was where I think she witnessed Laurie on the phone. We don't know who she was talking to, but she said something like, Laurie was scary angry. This was around the time that Tammy was, an attempt was made in Tammy's life, unsuccessful. And it seemed like Laurie was on the phone about that, possibly learning that Tammy was still alive, was furious when she got off the phone and said something like, he can't do anything right. And so all of this, you've kind of got to wonder, what are the jury making of all of this? And to me, the bottom line is the prosecution are building a case for intent, message by message, they're kind of showing Laurie literally. So when I say wanted to get rid of Charles, not just like, I don't want to be married to him. It's like she wants to get rid of him. And the precursor to that is he's got some sort of spirit in him, and the spirit needs to be destroyed. And then it gets taken over by an even worse spirit, and then they need to up their game and do something words and pray together and hold hands and get rid of this even more dangerous spirit. And then and then another spirit comes in, and then they've got to, sort of cast fire and whatnot. And then what's the other thing? There was even spirits going apparently into JJ's dog. So Laurie was like, "Well, I've got to get rid of the dog because it's the dog's also possessed." It's really, really crazy. And you can sort of sit here and chuckle and laugh and snigger. And at one point, the judge actually said to the gallery, "Please don't sort of chatter amongst yourselves. The jury can hear what you're saying. Please sort of refrain from reacting." It's quite hard to do occasionally. But basically, it's easy to look at Laurie and smile or laugh or joke or snigger. But the fact is, there's a body count associated with all of this nonsense. And you do wonder, how does someone get caught up in all of this stuff when it's so nonsensical? I actually was saying to a TV journalist near the end of the day, she should have become a saleswoman. Maybe she could have sold kitchen appliances or something. Because if she could convince someone to, if she could convince someone that she was, talking to Jesus or God herself, you could convince someone that someone else didn't deserve to live or whatever it was, then she could probably be a really good salesperson. And the fact is, Laurie wasn't employed. And the irony is that Zulema's job was to sort of coach people into getting jobs. So all kind of quite ironic. It is pretty serious stuff, yeah. Okay, so I need to kind of get moving with the analysis today. I've hired a car, so I've kind of been running around, driving around, and I'm going to be leaving tomorrow morning for somewhere. You guys must head to the Team Peachtree channel to find out where I'm going. Am I going north to Moscow, or am I going south to somewhere else? Where do you guys think I'm going? Am I going to Moscow? Where the Idaho case, the student killings case occurred. It's about 300 miles, I think. Why am I going to go south to Rexburg? Why am I going to go to the Grand Tetons? Where do you guys think I'm going to be headed? So anyway, the point is I need to kind of get through this so I can, finish up, sleep, and be up early tomorrow. So anyway, check Team Peachtree for that narrative, the narrative of adventure and fun and getting to see this beautiful country. So I'm gonna pull up my tweets for today. Before I do, these are some of the latest headlines. Witness testimony gives new insight into Alex Cox's involvement in the VALLOW case, and obviously that's from his wife. Obviously, it's from Zulema, right? That's the witness that gives us this incredible insight. Our first insight was from Melanie. It's a pretty good insight as well. So, ironically, I bought a newspaper today. It's actually called the Idaho Press. There wasn't anything about Laurie VALLOW in that newspaper. I actually threw it away. But online, there's this article, and it really talks about text messages, castings. So castings is almost like casting a spell, but it's a spell to get a demon out of a person. And so yeah, this was the end of the first week of the VALLOW trial. I basically sat in on the last 2 days of the first week. On the fourth day, I sat in court. I was right behind Laurie VALLOW. Today, no such luck. I did get into the overflow room. Here's my proof of that. So I got this little ticket. And let's just show you. I got this ticket, and you can see it says April 14th, and every day it's a different color. Sometimes it's kind of got a signature or something on it. And yeah, so today, the whole day was in the overflow room. it's frustrating because you can't see people's expressions. You basically only get the audio. What was even more frustrating was you kind of had four squares, four different cameras. Every camera is kind of too small to really make out anything. And then they were showing text messages in one of those squares, and that was also too small to see anything. I later sort of complained, or not complained, I just said, is it possible that we can just see just the text messages on screen? Because there was a moment earlier where they did that, and I thought, oh, that's great, and then they just stopped doing it. And so you kind of had to stand up, walk to the screen, and try and get really up close to see what the date was and what the details were. And so that really was quite frustrating because anyway, so that they then did change that, but by the time they did, a lot of the text had already been read. Yet another headline. Just go to this. They refer to it as day 10, but I mean I don't count the jury selection days as actual court days personally. So I'm on trial day 5. VALLOW Daybell told friends she could always put some pills in husband's water. And that does make you wonder, is that how possibly Joe Ryan died? Is that possibly how Alex Cox died? Is that got something to do with how Tammy may have died? In other words, were they to some extent drugged, right? It's a very sneaky way of killing someone. And then there's this one as well from Fox News. Doomsday cult mom Laurie Bellow's iCloud account reveals chilling new revelations. And so it's quite interesting that the detective said that Laurie seemed careful not to discuss anything via text message. But she seemed to kind of be covering her tracks. Okay, and so with that, we're going to go into my Twitter. And I'll give you some sort of, what do you call it? I'll give you some additional, well, I think it's already open over there. I'll give you guys some additional background, things that I observed as we go through this. Let's kind of go. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @CrimeRocket. I'll put a link to that in chat. I found today very different to yesterday for a lot of reasons. I found it, I don't know, I found it a lot harder to sit through, especially the last 2 hours. I just found Zulema, because her English is not perfect. She kind of says a few words, stops. Often she will think a long time before answering, and that just slows it down to such a pace that again, I had very, very little sleep, so I was definitely struggling to stay awake towards the end. And to be honest, to some extent, to stay interested. I really don't think they needed to do the entire day. I think they could have moved on from. Anyway, I think they could have sped it up a little bit. You must remember, if you're trying to make the case and you lose the jury's interest, you might as well not be presenting anything. Okay, so this is where it starts. Okay, let's have a look at some of your comments. Angela says, I'm near the Woodlands. My doctor is there. Okay. Helena says, does anyone think Alex could have been murdered as well as maybe drugged? I mean, if so many people have been murdered, is it just a coincidence that in the middle of all of this, Alex and he's a young guy, he's a fit guy, he's a strong guy, he just happens to die as well. And he also says something like, am I going to be the fall guy? And then he dies kind of the next day. So you kind of feel like this is, it's almost like the Stephen Smith case, that the aspects that haven't been, it feels like they haven't been fully investigated. Okay. Karen says, I didn't get to watch or read live tweets today. I've heard the name Zulema. Who is she? Zulema is someone who basically went to one of these preparing a people. Well, I think she started off by going to Melanie's house. Then she went to preparing a people conference where she met Laurie and Chad. Then they kind of, I don't know, recruited her or whatever. And then you kind of got the idea that they were trying to set Zulema up with Alex, and then Alex and her dated very briefly. Then they got engaged, and then he died. I mean, I think they were married for. I think they were married for 2 weeks. Not sure if they were engaged for 2 weeks or married for 2 weeks. But anyway, yeah. So there you have it. Alex's wife for 2 weeks, then he died. You almost get the idea that did he get married in order to make their marriage seem like, hey, everyone's getting married, no big deal? Was their marriage a kind of marriage gaslighting? You know, it's quite a weird way to think about it. You know, uh, how did he die? Well, that's the question. He was just found, he was found dead. Okay, yeah, they were kind of pushed into a marriage to sort of Laurie and Chad, seems to be Laurie and Chad's idea. Okay, so shall we get going? Um, so yeah, just by the way, I kind of took a risk today. I don't really know. It's a new city. I've never been in Boise before, and I didn't know if there was peak hour traffic. And so I took the risk of ordering an Uber. I wanted to go online to try and register, but they said, well, because there's no court on Monday, there's no registering for it on Friday. So you've got to register now on Monday to try and get into the courtroom. So I wanted to do that when I was at home, so I could do it on my, well, I suppose I could have done it at the court building as well, but ideally you want to be on your laptop indoors kind of thing, not in a car or sitting on a park bench. So anyway, I ordered a Uber like in real time, and it wasn't a problem. I got there exactly on time. Quite a cool driver as well. He also told me that his wife was very into true crime, and asked me a couple of questions about true crime. So anyway, so this was the approach. You can see it's quite a nice day. And yeah, it's pretty amazing that yesterday was like white all over, like looked like Christmas. And like the very next day, um, more than all of that snow is not only gone, but another 20% is gone as well. So yeah, this was actually a mistake. I said, we're looking at the floor where Charles Feather was lying. So when I came into the overflow room, they were sort of showing kind of, it looked like a floor, and then there was sort of blue tape on the side, right? I should actually delete this tweet. And that actually turned out to be, I think, the lectern or something with a camera above it. So that this is actually not correct. So sorry about that. I actually, because I came in with that on screen, I sort of thought I was seeing a floor because it looked like wood, and the blue on it looked like someone had sort of cordoned it off, but it definitely wasn't that. And so this is really where it starts. It's make this a little bit bigger. Looking at an email, so a copy was found of this email on Charles Vallow's device. It reads, "Hello, Chad. I hope you're well. This is Charles Vallow from Arizona." Now, just to be clear, this wasn't Charles Vallow from Arizona. Laurie was impersonating Charles in terms of sending this email. And she said, we really enjoyed having you stay with us back in November when you came to the Preparing a People conference. And that is really bizarre. And Chad actually asked, Charles asked her, what's that all about? Because no one stayed with us. And then there were other texts on screen. And these were literally Charles's words to Laurie. He said, is he, something, it's a little bit garbled, but he said, is he with whom you're having an affair? Meaning, is this the guy you're having an affair? So you kind of got the feeling Charles was aware that her behavior was sort of weird, right? And suspected she was having an affair, and then wondered, is this the guy that all of this weird behavior is about? And then obviously he'd read this email, and then he confronts her about it, and then he says, who are you lying to now? Trying to destroy another family, you're evil. That was dated June 16, somewhere around there, June 16, 2019. And of course, Charles was dead with about a month later, right? I think, was it the 11th of July? Anyway, we'll get to that. Then a couple of days later, June 29th, I may actually have that date wrong. It might be June 29th. As I say, you couldn't really read what's on screen sometimes. Charles says to Laurie, please stop spending money on my credit cards. And so what seemed to be happening was Laurie had impersonated Charles, saying to Chad something like, can I hire you to write a book, or something like that. And anyway, so then this one. Yeah, I've just mentioned how quickly they were going through the text. Charles actually threatens Laurie that he's going to contact Tammy and tell her about the affair. This is 6 months. This is sort of 6 months about before Tammy dies, right? And on June 29th, he actually tells Tammy about the affair. He threatens to tell about the affair, and then he does actually do that. And then Charles was actually murdered, when I say the following month, basically 2 weeks after this. And so, if you take it in isolation, right, if you take just where we are in isolation, what I mean by that is if you just take Laurie, Charles, and Chad, doesn't it remind you a lot of Chris Watts, right? It's basically, I'm married, I want to have an affair, I know you are getting a bit suspicious, I know that you aren't terribly happy with me, whatever, I'm not going to get a divorce, I can't afford it to get a divorce, and so look at what happens, right? In other words, can you see how just in terms of the Laurie, Charles, Chad dynamic, you've kind of got a Chris Watts scenario that's taking place. It's just delayed, right? And I'm kind of speculating. This hasn't been proven, but think about it. It's kind of almost like a delayed scenario where you've got this love triangle. Charles dies, right? And then a period passes, and then the other two children die as well, the one child and then the other. Can you see how it is very similar to the Chris Watts case? And instead of everyone being killed at the same time, and instead of the male being a perpetrator directly, you kind of have a situation here which is kind of even worse, in theory, if it's true, where a woman seems to set up other people around her to kill her own family members so that she can be with someone who's not even in her own family. Now that is it's so despicable on so many levels, because not only are you annihilating your own family strategically, step by step, if this is true, I mean, as I said, it's not being proven, but you also are ruining other people's lives by getting them to conspire or conspiring with them to get you where you want to go. And what also came out in today's testimony was this idea that Alex had been told that his only purpose on earth, his sort of sole purpose on earth, was to serve and protect Laurie. And then you also hear that Zulema was told that in another life, Laurie was her mother. So it was almost like if you, a gullible person, you know what, in another life, I was your dad. In another life, I was your husband. In another life, you kind of create instant loyalty when there really shouldn't be any. If you're thinking critically, you'd say, yeah, right. In another life, I was your brother. Oh, okay, great. So all I'm doing is I'm just trying to show you how, in a weird way, this case is like the Chris Watts case, but a lot worse. Not only is the body count greater, but the actual level of diabolical, recruiting people to do the devil's work in the name of God is absolutely crazy, right? So anyway, let's continue. Do you follow my reasoning? So let's just see some of your comments. Cuckoo indeed. What did Wendy say? Stephanie said, don't Melanie and Zulema feel ridiculous talking about this light dog zombie business? Well, you know what? If you see the way Melanie appears in court, disguising her appearance, and I was thinking about it. I think part of the reason why there's this strict thing about no cameras in the courtroom, I think it's specifically to protect Melanie, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was to protect Zulema as well. But I'm sure Melanie in particular wants to minimize the exposure she has to this entire case because, on the other side of time, on the other side of all these events, not only is this all shocking, disgusting, and terrible, it's extremely humiliating and embarrassing, I think, to be associated with this. All right. Gloria says murder seems to have become a divorce option with some people. Okay. Gigi Jardine, good to see you. Okay, so let's continue. So Chad's not happy that Laurie's spending his money. He says he's not going to pay any money for Chad to write whatever book. And then he asks Chad, just shows you he's been snooping around. Well, he's not really snooping, but he's been realizing what's going on his iCloud. And he says, Chad has got several of Laurie's dance videos. And then he tells Chad, does your wife know about this? Does Tammy know about this? And so you kind of get the idea that Tammy was forewarned as early as 6 months earlier by Charles. And who knows what Chad told Tammy? Oh, no, it's just a crazy fan who didn't like one of my books or whatever. Anyway, we're going to the next one. June 30th, 2018. I don't know whether that's the right date. I actually think it should be June 30th, 2019. And this is what he says to Laurie. You accuse me of infidelity, but it's you having an affair. There really is something wrong with you. Lying has become second nature to you. And I think that is a really big statement. I don't think that, I mean, let me ask you, do you think Charles is being spiteful? Do you think Charles is being unfair? Do you think Charles is accusing Laurie when he's actually the problem? Do you think Charles is cheating on Laurie? And so you really do get a sense, especially through Zulema, where it's like she's told that in another life Laurie was her mother, and Chad tells her that in another life she was raped, murdered, and dismembered as I think a 16-year-old or something. You really do get the feeling that lying has become second nature, not only to Laurie but to Chad as well. And that is what's so weird about this. It's like we're supposed to be these holy, godly, not only like incredibly enlightened beings. We're like at the highest level of spiritual enlightenment, but we can't stop lying. Just really nuts. I am God, but sorry, I'm struggling not to tell a lie. Okay, well, there we go. And so this is what he says. I really do think that is June 30th, 2019. Anyway, then he says, and you can imagine how triggering this is to Laurie. This is what Charles says, I'm going to Idaho first to meet with Tammy Daybell. He's not just going to call her. He's not going to send her a text or an email. He's going to go there in person. He's going to make sure that she knows what's going on, and he's going to nip this whole thing in the bud, right? Angela says, this is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. And that is why it's quite strange that you had this incredible fascination with the Murdoch case. Well, this is the Murdoch case like ×3. It's just not very wealthy people, although Charles VALLOW was, I think, a millionaire. Welcome, Amy Carter. Okay. So on July 1st, he makes a threat. And, you know, he really should have just gone to her and not said he was going to. He should have just done it. And then 10 days later, he was shot dead. And you kind of got to think about all of this voodoo, you know. Oh, I think Charles has got this terrible spirit in him. Oh, you know, now, hold on. I'm feeling it now. Oh, his name is Hiplos. And then, and then she gets another text from Charles. Ooh, whoa, there's another demon in him now as well. It's Ned. Wow, it's really terrible. Meanwhile, Laurie's having an affair. Charles has found out. So who is really kind of possessed with, you know, kind of bad intentions, right? So Laurie's response is that, like, you're not scaring me, Charles. Tammy's my friend. She's going to believe me. You're wasting your time. She won't even see you. You can go to Idaho. I'm not worried. Go to Idaho. Waste your time. I'm not. You're not going to intimidate me. And she said, you're just being ridiculous, right? He's ridiculous. Charles then accuses Laurie of using his money to pay or hire Chad to ghostwrite a book for her. And you know, you might say Charles is being paranoid, but ultimately Laurie was trying to get a pause onto Charles's money, right? Well, and so like via the insurance. Okay. I've got to say, Lindsay Blake's voice reminds me a lot of Camille Sanchez. Have I got that right? Is this Sanchez, right? Let me just make sure I've got her name right. Not I was going to say it's actually Camille Vasquez. So sorry about that. That's another error. Yeah, but anyway, the point is, she reminds me of Camille Vasquez. She's got a very sharp way of talking. She's also got dark hair. And what else can I say? She seems very organized, but she's got that sort of very sharp, eloquent, pointed way of talking, right? She's a good prosecutor. You sort of noticed the difference when there was another prosecutor today, a blonde lady who was just less assertive in the way that she carried herself. And so you had 4 numbers provided related to Laurie's iCloud account. I think a little bit later, another 2 numbers were provided. So you kind of got the idea that Laurie had several secret iCloud things going on, right? And I have noticed how date is starting to feature more and more often in high-profile cases. there's a South African case where iCloud, it's not only that it features in court, but it's also a way that often you have, and I think it's also part of the Barry Morphew case, Barry Morphew, Suzanne Morphew. I think it's also part of the Mo Wilson case. Anyway, the point is, it's also a way that couples can spy on one another. You sort of forget that, if one is less techno savvy than the other, you may forget that your spouse has the password to your iCloud and can track you, can track where you're going, can track what you're saying, who you're calling, and all that kind of thing. I think it is also possibly, it's just a theory I have. I don't have any proof, but I've got a feeling that Chris Watts knew what Shanann and Nicole Atkinson and who was that other friend, what they were saying behind his back about, fuck him and take the house and, all of that kind of thing. If he was able to see that on the iCloud, how do you think he felt about that? How do you think he felt about how aggressive, take the house, and kick him out and kind of thing? All of that just sort of said in the run up to Shanann being murdered. If he saw that, you can almost imagine him getting a sense of this is war. It's her friends against me, and I don't have a lot of friends, kind of thing. You guys remember that? Yeah, Eddie. No, it wasn't Eddie. It was the other. It was another friend. I can't remember her name. Can't believe I can't. Anyway, I can see her face. I just can't remember her name. So Alex says to Laurie, this is Alex Cox says to Laurie, Ned is still alive, still just confirmed. Meaning, Charles is still alive, and Charles is, I acknowledge, I accept that Charles is Ned, taken over by this evil spirit, right? So the fact that Alex is saying this to Laurie and saying he's still alive, I mean, when last did you talk to someone? Think about it. When last did you talk to someone and someone said to you, oh, my ex-husband's still alive, just out of the blue. Oh, my son's still alive. Oh, that person's still alive. You only talk in those terms if you don't want them to be alive. If it's like a hit or there's a gang scenario going on. Do you agree with that? Why on earth would you say someone is still alive? And the other thing that is quite sort of sneaky is by giving them these possession names, it's just the same as hiding what's really going on. So instead of saying Charles is still alive, anyone who's going to kind of come after the fact and try and figure out what's going on is going to be a little bit confused by all of this. Charles died, who's Ned? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, there's that aspect as well. So this is what Nicole said to Laurie, and am I right in saying that Nicole is Brandon Bordeaux's, how do you say it? Brandon's ex-wife? Nicole is Laurie's niece, or is it cousin? Anyway, she said that Tammy awoke on the night, coughing, threw up, and collapsed. And one wonders whether they were trying to associate that with coronavirus, except it happened just before coronavirus. Remember, she died in December 2019. Anyway, so Laurie was told about Tammy's death. Laurie said that she was in Hawaii and it was 6 a.m. Almost like she immediately, when she was told about her death, it's almost like she was immediately saying, well, I'm not there. I had nothing to do with it, indirectly. let's have a look at some of your comments. I'm just going to pull this up a bit bigger. It does, yeah, that does dehumanize the person. I always try to emphasize. Sally says, why are the mods on this channel so adorable? By the way, Terry, I haven't said hello to you. Good to see you here. Terry, you'll be pleased. I've driven a little bit in a vehicle. I managed to get from A to B without any fender benders. You'll be quite proud of me. So yeah, that's a good point, Cornelia. That's also quite interesting. Also quite interesting. I mean, it was officially with us at a certain time, but when was it really doing its thing? Okay, so Laurie seems to be explaining Tylee's movements to her son Colby on November 22nd, about 2 months after she was murdered. It's basically saying, like, she's saying something to the effect of, you know, I got a message late at night, and maybe that's why she's not responding. And I'm sure she'll Venmo you. I think she was supposed to pay him something, and but you kind of get the idea that Laurie's sort of saying what Tylee's doing when obviously she hasn't been around for about 2 months. You're trying to give Tylee like life after death by saying that she's doing this and that. Okay, so now more iCloud numbers are revealed. They also belong to Laurie VALLOW. They contain messages between herself and Alex Cox. So you kind of get the idea that this iCloud was specifically for the dirty work, in theory, that needed to be communicated, needed to be discussed between herself and Alex, right? So she kind of, that's the system she uses. She doesn't send texts, she doesn't send emails, or she does it within the system. Okay. Laurie sends cryptic messages on July 9th, 2 days before Charles was killed. He refers to the plot thickening and things coming to a head. Well, they were, weren't they? And that Alex needs to protect her, right? She tells her brother, you need to protect me. And it's like quite weird. Charles isn't threatening to kill her. Charles isn't threatening to hurt her. Charles feels that his wife is cheating on him. Sorry, well, at this point, not necessarily, but certainly at a previous point. But also, he's concerned about his kids and the way Laurie's behaving, and isn't that all justified? I mean, didn't people need to be protected from Laurie? And at one point, Alex actually says, I think he says this to Zulema, he says, I'm either a messenger of God or I'm not. Almost like he's saying, either I am this warrior figure or I'm kind of, what's the word? I'm kind of, a monster, right? It's actually incredible that people can be turned into, I mean, if you really think about it, wasn't Alex basically a zombie himself? Alex just doing whatever he's told. Do this, okay. Do that, okay. Do this. Your name's going to be known throughout the world as this warrior. Okay, cool, thanks. Do that, okay. And then it's like, but none of these things you're doing is loving. None of these things are like, yeah, it's just really it's quite strange. I mean, isn't the biggest zombie in this whole story Alex, right? Do you agree? Like if Alex wasn't such a zombie, wasn't such an idiot, then how could any of this stuff have happened? Based on that, I guess the law enforcement theory of what's going on here, right? Silent Murmur says, I agree. It's bizarre how the people become in these real life events. Yeah, and I mean, the problem in these real life events is that people lose track with reality. That don't know what is real, that they stop thinking critically. They just take what they're told at face value. Okay, let's continue. Let's go on. Also, lots of messages deleted on July 11th. That's quite big. Why there's suddenly it's like one day messages, another day messages, another day messages. July 11th, deleted. Why is that? Why is that the case? Messages to Chad deleted on that day as well. And that's what I always say, the absence of evidence is also evidence. I mean, if you were a cop coming to this case for the first time, right? And the question was, let's say you were assigned to investigate what happened to Charles VALLOW. One of the quickest and easiest ways of just getting a sense of what's going on is you just say, let's get the cell phone records of the people closest to Charles. That's point number one. And point number two, let's see if there's a lot of deleted messages from July 11th. Now, that doesn't mean deleted messages don't mean you've committed murder, but it does tend to mean that that's odd. Why have you on that day suddenly deleted messages, right? Okay. It's very strange for me talking about an Alex that's the horrible person that is an idiot, that is a zombie. When I've got a best friend, I had a best friend whose name was Alex, who was the opposite. He was an incredible guy, a very balanced, intelligent, wonderful person, and also a man of God and a church guy. It's very weird talking about an Alex when I know an Alex that I know in a totally different way. I tend to think of the name Alex as just a good person, whereas this Alex is um, kind of an agent of, seems to be an agent of destruction, like an angel of death in a way. Okay, Laurie tells Chad she has a Laurie tells Chad that she has a spear through her heart. And I think Charles said something similar. Anyway, after finding out that Charles didn't leave her as the beneficiary, it should be on his, not sure why I wrote that, in terms of his insurance. And then they speculate, Chad and Laurie speculate on who might be the beneficiary. And I don't know, there's something smarmy about Chad wanting to know who did inherit this money. You almost kind of get the sense of, you know what, I wanted that money, I didn't get it, somebody else got it. Maybe there's a way to get it from that person. Maybe we can still get the money from the person who got it. I mean, why else do you want to know who who got the money? And then she's so obsessed that she even calls up the insurance company and says, because Chad, I don't know, comes out of this not particularly likable. He basically says something like, I wouldn't be surprised if they fraudulently changed the insurance policy after Charles died. And it's like Chad just doesn't seem to realize that Charles didn't love Laurie anymore, that Charles didn't like Laurie anymore. And so they're all really surprised when it turns out that Charles has made Kay the beneficiary. By the way, I actually saw Kay during during the court recess for lunch. I did what I didn't do the previous day, and I actually went to I went across the road and just bought a couple of slices of pizza. And when I was there, Kay was there, and a couple of other folks from the courtroom. So, just a simple thing like that, seeing Kay getting lunch, it gives you, again, just an appreciation that these aren't characters in a story. These are people. They eat, they sleep, they have bad dreams, they are permanently scarred by someone's stupid decision making, right? And still suffering from that damage, still seeking closure. And so, anyway, Chad responds. He just says, "Wow," when it turns out that Charles hasn't left Laurie as the beneficiary. You kind of get the sense that Chad expected it as well. And so Chad, it's actually Chad who says, "Laurie, go and find out who the beneficiary is." And you kind of get the sense that Chad can't let this go, right? Laurie tells Chad she thinks Kay is the beneficiary. She tells Chad that that she spoke to the insurance company, and they told her the beneficiary was changed in March. But she kind of reassures Chad she's still getting $4,000 a month from social services, right? And that's kind of why Laurie doesn't work. I don't need to work because I'm getting money from the government. I don't need to work because, and even when the kids have died, she continues to collect that money. Chad, and so this was like this really blew my mind. Chad refers to himself as a grown-up Harry Potter living with the Dudleys. That his adventures with Laurie are what he looks forward to, and he refers to Laurie as this stunning goddess. You kind of get the idea that Chad, almost like, again, like Chris Watts, Chad never really dated. In fact, he didn't. He married the first woman that he dated. But you kind of get the idea that Chad's not had a very colorful or exciting um, uh, romantic life. And when he meets Laurie, she's kind of like a Nicole Kessinger. She's exciting to him. She's totally different. She's not like she's, she represents risk and adventure and excitement, and of course a lot of other things as well. And I don't know if you remember, I actually referred to this case feeling like a warped Harry Potter. Do you remember me saying that? And so you kind of had Chad actually seeing himself as a kind of Harry Potter who casts spells and everyone thinks he's the greatest. And Laurie, I guess, is Hermione. Anyway, and this kind of thing like really starts making you angry. You realize, although they think it's a joke, this is despicable. Alex sends a message to Laurie, and the password is, sorry, another typo from me, too many kids. Right, that's the password, too many kids. And that was sent September 3rd. 3 weeks later, the kids were killed. It's almost like Laurie has complained about the kids in the context of she's having an affair. You can imagine Chris Watts almost doing the same thing, just thinking, I've got these kids, I want to have an affair. How am I gonna, like on a weekend when I've got to see the kids and I want to be with Nicole, how am I gonna do that? And here you have it. Alex saying to Laurie with the password, too many kids. Laurie's obviously said this to him in a certain way. And so Laurie responds by saying, funny. Laurie accepts that. Laurie says, yeah, that's how I feel, right? So, from the perspective of the jury, it's hard to imagine that this is not damning, that their own words aren't damning them. Do you guys agree with that? That just slowly, brick by brick, the prosecution are making a case for intention. I mean, how good a mother can you be if you have a password too many kids, right? Christy says they're cruel and heartless. That's also a good point. It's a good point. Yeah. And what's also interesting is Amanda Knox was totally, you might say, yeah, not really. She was just reading a Harry Potter book. Amanda Knox, when she was in Perugia, she was, she was so obsessed with Harry Potter that she was actually reading him, I think, in German and whatever it was. And the reason that she found Raffaele's solicitor so attractive is she said he reminded him of Harry Potter. And when you actually see photos of him, I mean, he's literally got glasses on. He's got a similar hairstyle, and he's kind of got a scarf that, in a way, it's like a mustard-colored scarf. It reminds you a little bit of some pictures you may have seen of Harry Potter in the Hogwarts regalia. You know what I mean? And so you kind of get the idea that something that was meant just as entertainment for people, some people literally kind of went nuts on it. Anyway, let's continue. So I was in the overflow room all day. It was about 20% full. And curiously, at the very end of the day, I've almost got the heebie-jeebies saying this. At the very end of the day, John Pryor came into the overflow room. At some point, he was sitting sort of in the middle of a sea of empty seats, kind of in the same seat he sat in the previous day. But at the very end of the day, he came in again. And then I don't know what he did. He sort of came in. I think he had coffee or something, but he sort of got up. And then he came and he sat right behind me on the right side of the where all the seats were. And I don't know, it was, I mean, maybe it was too shy for me sitting right behind him the day before. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Um, and so, anyway, more messages are read into the record. But I've got to say, I always find defense lawyers in murder, high profile murder cases, I personally find them quite scary individuals, right? If you think someone may have committed a murder, right? That's scary in itself. You may have killed another human being. That's already scary. But what about the person who says, this is a high profile case. Everyone or a lot of people think you did X, Y, Z. I'm going to stand up there and I'm going to defend you. I'm going to stand up there and say, and try and convince people that you didn't commit a murder, right? I don't know, and you do that for a living. Like, I defend murderers or I defend whatever. I'm just saying, there's something about a defense lawyer in homicide cases that is, I find pretty scary. Wouldn't you? Like, what do you guys say? I mean, there's something like they can be very charming. In Oscar Pistorius' case, you had Barry Rue, very charming, and he won the charm stakes. He charmed the judge in that case. Um, and then yeah. I mean, what do you think of the lawyers in the Murdoch case, the defense lawyers? Um, if you were anyway, so I'm just saying I just find them an interesting people. Now that's true. That is also true. That's a good point. Okay. Anyway, so let's continue. So um, to be honest, I'd sort of heard this other person's name, and I thought, why are there so many characters in this case? Let's concentrate on Chad and Laurie, and really just Laurie. And so I wasn't even sure who is that. Is it Zunaida? And then, like, I just was listening to this in the overflow room, just like, what's this about fire being sent to a car and Hiplos while he's driving? And we can do this spiritually. In other words, you kind of got the idea that Laurie dreamt that there was a car wreck, and now she thought, well, now I can actually project. I can project disaster onto a car. Let's imagine that him driving and the car gets consumed by an inferno. And if you think about it, if you are imagining someone dying, right? That's not so different from literally premeditating their death. So if you're saying, no, that's all spiritual, it's just in a spiritual sense that I want to destroy the demon. But you're imagining like fiery infernos, and you're imagining, I'm not sure, like all the different ways that you can, bring about what you're trying to bring about. How is that different from actually premeditating someone's death? So I said, Laurie seems to be trying to do a forced projection murder. Like, let's all hold hands and concentrate. And oh no, we're just trying to get rid of the demon. But what happens when that happens? So there's a demon in JJ. Well, we need to get rid of the demon. But doesn't that mean getting rid of JJ? There's a demon in Tylee. Let's all try and get rid of the demon. But doesn't that mean getting rid of the demon gets rid of Tylee? There's a demon in Charles. All we want to do is get rid of the demon. We just want to get rid of Ned. Okay, let's try and get rid of the demon. But then Charles dies. So you're getting rid of the demon, or you're getting rid of the person? So anyway, it turns out that Hiplos, I think it's spelled with one P, I'm not quite sure. That's Charles VALLOW, and he ends up having quite a few names. I think he was also called Schneider, wasn't he? So he was Schneider, I think he was Ned, he was Hiplos, I don't know what else. And Tammy is Viola, and so it goes on. So it goes on. And so Chad sends to Zulema Pastinas, thank you for your help with Hypnos. That's from Chad, right? And so not only do you have Laurie and Chad basically saying, you know what, this person's got a evil spirit in them, and they need to get rid of the evil spirit, aka they need to get rid of the person. But don't worry, that person is no longer that person because they've not been taken over by an evil spirit. Now you kind of have a group of people all trying to get rid of the person, which basically means that person needs to die. And when they do die, it's like God has worked for us. God has delivered what needs to happen, right? Mel says Rick or Nick Schneider. Yeah. Christy says you can peel away the onion layers off of Chad if you read his books. Yeah. Have you read his books, Christy? The Crypto Zoo says sending bad karma will come back threefold. When Melanie said they never even prayed for the kids, that spoke volumes to me. So, if you think about it, it's not praying that someone is saved or praying that someone is sort of just, I don't know, you pray that someone finds their way or that their lives improve. This is a kind of praying that someone comes to harm, that someone is destroyed. It's not, in a lot of traditions, you pray for closeness, you pray for healing, you pray for some kind of constructive resolution. Whereas this is like almost the opposite, cursing, condemning, destroying, right? It really is effed up, right? Angela, thank you so much. So, by the way, remember I said yesterday, just in terms of a money thing, yesterday I reserved an Uber and it cost like 40 something dollars. And then I got an Uber back and it was about $10, $12. So it was $52 just to get to court and back. Well, today I didn't reserve one. It was a little bit of a risk, but it was only about $10, $11 there and $10, $11 back. So that's how you learn, right? That's how you learn. Okay. So Charles is classified as the evil spirit, and Chad says, "Thanks for your help trying to get rid of Hiplos." And then 9 days later, he's murdered. And what do you think Zulema says after Charles is murdered? Like, oh, my prayers were answered. Laurie tells Zulema she's sending fire and blinding him with light. And I kind of get the idea that is what she was doing um, with Charles. And if you think about it, these ideas of I'm sending fire. Well, when you fire a gun, you use the word fire. When you fire a gun, there's a fiery discharge, right? Um, and yeah, the pain can feel blinding. But the other thing that's quite interesting is when Zulema, they show an excerpt out of a diary, I think, and they talk about the different ways you can cast demons out. One of them is fire. And look at what they did to Tylee's body. Another way is you bind the evil into someone's, you bind that evil. And look at what they did to JJ, and so it makes you wonder, certainly from Alex's perspective, how symbolic all of this was. I mean, it all was symbolic. And although we're symbolic creatures, reality isn't symbolic. Like this, if I say this is a glass of water, the words are symbolic. This, glass means glass, but I mean, whether or not you call this a glass, a mug, or whatever, it is what it is, right? You get what I'm saying? The words represent something are symbolic, but reality is what it is, regardless of your symbolic appreciation of it, right? I can say this is water, and you might say it's wine. Well, it is what it is, regardless of the symbol you attach to it. But that is one way that human beings can get totally effed up in terms of getting caught up in symbolic nonsense. Pharaoh Gamma says, "What's the answer to the poll question?" Let's have a quick look at it. So have you decided who is pulling the strings, setting the pace, writing down names in the cult? 48%, almost half of you say Laurie. Almost a third of you, it's quite a lot, say it's still not clear. And then 23%, less than a quarter, say definitely Chad. It's more than twice as many who say Chad say Laurie. I'm inclined to think that, especially when you look at who has actually died in the story, how many of them were relatives of Laurie? How many of them were relatives of Chad? Right? Also, who's the agent? Who's the angel of death? Is an angel who answers more to Chad, or an angel who answers more to Laurie? And I think there's your answer. Does that make sense? Yeah, but the question isn't do you think Laurie and Chad? The question is which one more than the other, right? That's the question. Which one more than the other? Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Stephanie says no one answers to Chad, only Laurie. Then Laurie says to Zulema, I'll keep the light and fire going until he's gone. Can you see how that expresses a kind of intentionality? I'll keep the light and fire going until he's gone. I mean, if we being frank, what are we talking about? Until who's gone? Who's she talking about here? Isn't she saying, I'll do something until someone's gone? Well, until who's gone? What does gone mean? Does God mean that the demon's gone, or does it mean when someone's dead and then that person does die? And then does she continue casting out demons of that person? So who is she talking about here? Isn't she talking about Charles? And isn't she talking about Charles being gone? And doesn't Charles being gone mean Charles being dead? Right? So this was just a bit of personal commentary. Do you see how losing track of reality happens? So if you want like a, a cautionary tale, you want kind of an anecdote where you say, okay, so that's what happened in this high profile case. How do I protect myself? How do I make sure I don't get caught up in, you know, the snares of wishful thinking? And all of us can. You can fall in love with someone. You can be sold something that's not, um, what's the word? You know, I mean, when I hired the car that I hired, um, it was the only car in the entire bay that well, once it wasn't washed. Part of the car was washed, but there were parts that were not washed and kind of damaged. And I could have made a fuss and gone back and said, I don't want this car, and I had actually booked a different vehicle. But you kind of got to ask yourself, um, you know, how critical you are in your thinking and how um, much time you spend dealing with the real world. Because if you don't deal with the real world, it's going to deal with you. So one way to lose track of reality is by giving labels to the things in your world. And if those labels aren't accurate, and they probably aren't, then you're living in a self-created echo chamber and you're going to get into trouble. So just in that one respect, if you are a labeler and your world is filled with labels, think about Laurie and Chad and all these characters in the story. Everything is labels. A person is a demon. You label this or that level. And so everything is almost like a step away from reality, where it's covered in layers and systems and almost like the Lavelle system with Shanann Watts. Reality is what it is. You know, you can even think about birds and animals and trees. They are what they are, whatever their names are. It's the same with, are you just your name? Is that the be all and end all of who you are? Are you just the job that you do, or is there more to it than that? And so, to the extent that you reductionist and simplistic about everyone around you, you're having a very shallow experience of the real world, and the real world's going to have a hard time dealing with you, because the real world's a subtle place with kind of certain complicated dynamics going on. And if you refuse to acknowledge those things, then you're going to be vomited out because you a rigid, unpalatable sort of um, moving part in the system. Do you know what I'm saying? Iceland, good to see you. Aloha here for a quick hi while I'm on my break. Where are you, Iceland? I know you're in Florida. Where are you now? Christy said, meeting Laurie and Laurie choosing him was profound. He could not believe that he could be with a woman as beautiful as she. She made his dreams come true, all an illusion. It was all a daydream. It was all, yeah. Silent Murmur says, it's almost like they believe everything is like a cartoon. Bridget says, is it worth it? You ask yourself, pick your battles and what you want to focus on. And I've got to say, look, I'm traveling through America, and it's in a way easy to lose track of reality when you are having all sorts of things do your thinking for you. You don't need to navigate to a courthouse because you order an Uber. You don't need to, you know what I mean? You've got a lot of the thinking process done on your behalf. And so when do you think about stuff? What do you think about, right? And for example, when I went sort of grocery shopping after I picked up my vehicle, um, whenever you go to a foreign country and you in shopping aisles and everything's totally different, you are forced to kind of look at the items that are there. When I was in South Korea, you can't even tell what the names are on the packaging because it's in a foreign language. So you kind of got to look and see, oh, that looks like it could be sugar, or is it salt? Um, I had to buy a box with those coffee capsules, and there's a gamble. You don't know, is it going to fit in the machine that I've got here? What I'm trying to say is there's a way to move through the real world where you basically just on autopilot, where you drift, where you are like a zombie, where you just go with the flow and you just operate kind of, in an automatic fashion. And then there's another way where you're a critical thinker, where you're aware of your place in the universe. And a great way to awaken that whole experience is to travel, but it's also to be in nature. When you're in nature, you're not necessarily in the symmetrical confines that make life convenient, but also make life sort of empty in a way, right? Um, when you're in nature, you kind of get a sense of the true proportions of yourself in the world. Whereas when you're in a world created by people, you get a kind of a false sense of security. You get a false sense of power and agency. Anyway, a little bit of deep thinking there. Gloria's nature is very healing. I found it quite interesting that Laurie doesn't seem to like dogs. That also tells you a little bit about the kind of person I think she is. Yeah, it does humble you. Okay, so let's continue. So I was just saying, by labeling things, by labeling people, um, that's how you start losing track of reality. Try to be open to just who someone or something is. Try not, we always in a rush when there's a true crime case. I want to know immediately who did this. I want to know immediately, like, you don't even know who the person is. I want to know, okay, so that's that person. His name is that, and he's a narcissist. Well, now I know why this happened. No, you don't. I mean, in the Laurie VALLOW case, we're still trying to figure out how this happened and why it happened, right? It's not that simple. That's why it's an 8-week case. It's not Laurie arrives in court, 10 minutes later, verdict, guilty, not guilty. Some things aren't that simple or easy. And so we've got to be careful ourselves being simplistic or reductionist about ourselves, about others, about the world that we're in. But there is always a what do you call it? There's always a appetite, a desire to make things as simple as you possibly can, because that's how our world is designed to be. It's designed to be easier, designed to be simple. That's how we kind of program. How can I make this as easy as possible for myself? But that's not like the road to fitness or health. Part of the road to fitness or health is that you design struggle into it, you design effort into it, you design work into it, right? Not everything is supposed to be quick and easy. And thinking is sometimes difficult, painful, hard. You know, sometimes when you think, you realize things, you realize, oh my God, I've wasted time. You know, oh my God, I've wasted money. Oh my God, I was so stupid. And so it's tempting to just go back into that original thinking that made you feel good. But ultimately, the joke's on you when you do that. Mel says this has always been a very complex case. So this is the kind of thing I like to do on my channel, is you don't just do the dry reporting of the case, you also every now and then pause and you say, what can we learn from this? Where does this take us? What does it say about our society? What does it say about me? What can I learn from this? Right? That's a very good point. I mean, that is real reality. That's really getting to know, I don't really love you anymore, and your life's going to change because you have a lot less money now, and you know the fairy tale that we're going to love one another forever and ever, that then changes. Anyway, so let's continue. So the prosecution excuses the witness, and now we go on to a recess. This was a terrible cup of coffee. I put far too much sugar into it. And I actually got up at this point and I asked if the text could be shown full screen. And then they did actually try to accommodate that. So yeah, I kind of thought Zulema was going to be called next, and then she was. While the jury was out of the court, there was quite a long discussion about that she's got a criminal record in Arizona from the 90s, and they were trying to decide if it needed to be disclosed. I don't think it was like a serious thing. It wasn't like it wasn't a big deal. And I think they ultimately decided it didn't need to be disclosed. I think if it was disclosed, there were issues of that she would need her own personal lawyer present, but he wasn't, what's the word? I'm not quite sure what the word is. He's not sort of authorized to practice law in Idaho, and it would cause all sorts of problems. Yeah, that was about 25 years ago. Thanks, Christine. Thank you. Gloria says I'm a work in progress. Okay, so that's kind of something I want to try and encourage my audience, is to become functional in your lives. Don't just look at dysfunctional criminals. Look at them and apply some of that to your own life and become more functional. Also look at society and say, this is how we can improve society, and we can be part of the way society improves. Every time a crime happens, it's a tear in society. It's a sign that society is weak in a particular area. And if we as individuals can become collectively stronger people, better thinkers, then we can actually heal society without like just bringing one criminal to justice at a time. You can actually bring other people who are perhaps broken, injured, traumatized. You can bring them back to a certain level of wholeness where they can actually contribute to making a better society, and that's a better world, right? Okay, so then we go on to this. So if you want to read about those explosive texts in more detail, you could go to that, obviously, East Idaho News. And then this was the award for the craziest text so far, went to Chad. And this is from Chad to Laurie, July 26, 2019. He said, these are Chad's own words. And it's so freaking childish. He says, I'm a grown up version of Harry Potter. He sees himself as the boy who lived. He sees himself as a wizard, as a gifted wizard living amongst muggles. And he says, I've had to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. I don't know whether he thinks of his wife and his kids and I don't know the people in his in his sort of orbit as the Dudleys. He said, every few weeks I get to escape in an amazing adventures with my goddess lover. And of course he's committing adultery, right? It's not just that he's having amazing adventures, he's actually going against all of the biblical stuff that he supposedly stands for. He's being a total two-face. It's total schizophrenia. It's absolute schizophrenia. And anyway, he says, I'm feeling trapped. Well, he's feeling trapped in his marriage, but I sense permanent freedom is coming. Well, that is for someone who's a prophet and this godlike ability to see into the future and the past. I don't know, is permanent freedom coming or is permanent incarceration coming? What do you guys think? I mean, it's hard not to laugh, right? Cornelia, thanks very much for that. Thank you. Yeah, no, it wasn't licensed in Idaho. Sharon says, does anyone know Chad? Is he charismatic? Well, they played a prayer, I think a blessing that he did on Alex Cox, and I was quite moved by it. I could sort of feel myself being hypnotized. There was also a little bit of that, Chad being emotional and almost like crying, and I felt myself definitely being drawn into that. So, he did have obviously some ability to influence people. That is the question. Okay, Stephanie says, except he and Laurie aren't committing adultery because they've been married 7 times. Yeah, that's the ridiculous ruse. But can you see? He says, I sense permanent freedom is coming. Well, I sense permanent freedom is coming. Actually, maybe not, Chad. Maybe permanent, not freedom. We'll see. So anyway, he says, I've said they just allocated another 20 or so names. They went through a whole long list, and I thought, awesome, I'm going back into court, and then it just wasn't to be. So, I missed the cut, and then Zulema was sworn in. She was asked, did you watch any coverage? She said no. And she's from Gilbert, Arizona. She met Laurie in 2018 at Melanie Gibbs' house. That was her first meeting with Laurie. She was giving a testimony about visitations with angels. That's what Laurie was saying. The very first time Zulema met Laurie was saying, I've been visited by angels, specifically Moroni. And Laurie said that she was a personal messenger of Jesus Christ. And Zulema was like, oh, really? You're a personal? Yes, yes. And also, I was your mother in the previous life. Oh, really, really, right? And so she's asked, what does that mean? So she says, well, it means you actually had a physical conversation with Jesus Christ. What did that mean to you? Well, it's the highest spiritual experience a human being can have. Did you believe her? That's the bottom line, right? That's the bottom line. Did you believe her? And I think Zulema is a good example of, and I'm not trying to be nasty when I say this, but some people will believe anything. And you see it in true crime all the time. You see creators making up absolute garbage, inventing things, telling the audience exactly what they want to hear, and then you watching and you're kind of going, keepers, they actually believe that, right? And that is how simple it is. You are told something that's actually a stretch. You're told something that's unlikely. You're told something that is um, not proven. You're told something that is quite radical. And then what happens? You choose to believe it. And as Chelsea says, how do you believe that nonsense? But there are a lot of people who do. Manson thought of himself as a spiritual guy. And so, again, it's this idea of if you are constantly surrounded by fairy tales, if you're watching movies all day, if you are constantly separated from the real world, then it's easy to believe nonsense because your whole world is nonsense to begin with. You know what I mean? If you don't have any moment where you actually have your feet on the ground, having a dog actually helps ground you in the real world. Traveling helps you ground you in the real world. Any way that you think critically, any way that you're quiet in nature, where you can face yourself. And so, if you don't have any practice dealing with the real world, then you will believe anything. If you don't have much experience, if you don't step into the unknown, if you are too scared to actually make a mistake, and I've got to say, I feel like a little bit of a sissy, driving a car, I feel like I'm super cautious. I don't want to make a mistake. But that's how you learn. You learn by going down the wrong road. Unfortunately, you can also learn by, turning where you shouldn't be going. But we try so hard to protect ourselves and to protect. This is actually what I want to say. So, I was thinking when I parked this vehicle I just rented in the parking lot, and I was just thinking that the true test of a person, the true test of you, the true test of me, the true test of a relationship, isn't when everything's under control. We want everything to be under control, and a lot of time everything is under control. But that's actually not reality. The true test isn't when things are going right. And that's also what we want. We want things to be going the way we want them to be going. But the true test of who you are, of who I am, of what sort of glue really exists in a relationship, of what really binds us together, and to what extent we aren't bound together, is when things aren't going right, when things break down, when things are beyond our control, when we are upset, or you know what I mean? When things are not going the way we want them to be going, that's the true test of who you are and how you deal with reality. Reality is things going wrong. Reality is mistakes. Reality is bumps and injuries and dead ends and U-turns and um, you know lessons learned. The true test is how flexible you are and how you grow and increase and evolve, as opposed to someone who tries to hide away from that. And we know with the Hobbit, you have the door that opens to the unknown. The unknown represents adventure, but it's also, you might not come back. If you step out that door, you may never come back. You may not survive, but you may also really come alive. That's what life's all about, right? But life's also about getting dirty, getting injured, tripping and falling and embarrassing yourself, right? And to the extent that you try and control and prevent all of that stuff, you also are avoiding life, right? And so the real test of who you are is when you do trip and stumble and fall and embarrass yourself and get hurt. How do you respond to that? Do you get angry? Do you, or do you sort of learn? Or do you, laugh? What do you do? Okay, so let's continue. Zulema went with Laurie to a Preparing a People conference in St. George, Utah. Now, let me just ask you this, and I don't mean to be unkind, but like if you are expecting the world to end, doesn't it already give you an idea of a certain kind of person, right? And you know, my own mother was very caught up in the end times, and I actually know quite a few people who are right now. People who think, oh, there's a volcano, oh, there's an earthquake in Turkey. The end times, we are in the end times right now, right? What do you think that kind of psychology is actually saying? It's saying, I'm anxious. I'm maybe perhaps prone to exaggerating things. Maybe I'm prone to being a pessimist. But basically, this whole thing of preparing a people, some people are preparing for the weekend. Some people, like when I went to collect my vehicle, I went to the airport. There were people who on a Friday are about to go flying somewhere to go and have an adventure somewhere. Meanwhile, other people want to prepare for the end of the world. They want to find where they can buy food and lock it underground and get into their caves and never come out. There's a totally different psychology. The one psychology is, I'm scared, I need to protect myself. The other psychology is, I want to live, I want to go out there, I want to enjoy myself, right? So can you see you're already dealing with a certain kind of person in these preparing a people conference? It's like, I'm scared. How can you help me not be scared? I'm told that these terrible things are going to happen. The rivers will be turned, it's all like in symbolic language. The rivers will be turned to blood. Cities will become kind of consumed with fire. I'm scared. Please help me. Okay, well, here's a book. Read this book. That'll help you. Um, okay, well, I'll pray for you. Okay, thank you so much. Could you be my friend? And Zulema ends up becoming like an instant friend with Laurie, and before she knows it, she's married to Laurie's brother. But it all starts with I'm scared, right? And so Che Bell presents himself as the savior to these preppers. You're not sure what's going to happen in the future? I can tell you. I know the past and the present and the future. I'm a messenger from God. Are you afraid that the future could be really horrific? Well, don't worry. It's my job to get all the people who are saved. Do you want to know if you're saved? Okay, let's just see on my rating. Okay, yes, it says here you are 4.2. Oh, hold on, 4.1. I've got it right here. It's very clear that's your label. Now you don't need to think about it. Just stand over here. You say, don't think to sit here. Now you're part of my flock. Just go, okay, great. You're with us. Now let's get some more sheep. Come this way. Please don't think. Just, okay, you are 3.7. Let's just have you over here. And so it's like, I'm anxious. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Well, I'll give all my power to you. You decide what's going to happen to me. Thanks very much. And off you go. And then what do you think happens in reality? Right? What do you think happens in the reality if you're a sheep? Well, the sheep are led to the slaughter, right? So we go into the next one. I just found a lot of this very hard to listen to. It's like, must I report on the nonsense as well? Must I report on, I believe in this, and it's really interesting. Okay, but it's not really real. Do I really have to report on it? So anyway, what did I say here? So Lima was told that Chad was whatever in another life, and that Laurie was Helena in another life, right? Um, okay, so that's something else. And then that they showed photo exhibits 53A, 53B, 53C. I really don't know for the life of me why they spent 20, 30, 40 minutes on these photos. I mean, it was basically people at one of these preppers things. There they are. There you go. There they are. The first two were from St. George, a prepping conference in St. George, the other one in Boise. Um, Melanie was at this prepping thing. So I wondered if Melanie's still a prepper. Um, And so in one of the photos, you actually saw someone holding Zulema's hand and praying for her. You fancy that? It reminds me a bit of Fight Club, where that guy goes to sort of self-help things, and like people that have got testicular cancer, or people who've got, I don't know, pregnancy classes or whatever, and then he doesn't have cancer, but he just wants to be with strangers who will give him a hug. You kind of get that sense, like, don't you have family that you can go to? Don't you have friends that you can talk to? And so she goes to this prepping thing, and she kind of just gets instantly caught up in like a cult situation. It's like, I'm scared, I'm worried, I don't have friends, I'm assuming. I'm alone. Don't worry, come with us and we'll turn you into a right? I'll pray for you. I'll tell you that you had another life. I'll tell you that Gloria was your mother in another life, anyway. So yeah, I can't help being, it's difficult not to be sarcastic about a lot of this stuff. It was a ridiculous start to a disgraceful end, right, for certain people's lives. You might think it's a joke, but it wasn't. If you look at those autopsy photos of Tylee, it's not a joke. If you look at the autopsy photos of JJ and Tammy, it's real. All of this nonsense became real. So Chad said that he would give you a blessing if you went to Laurie's home. Did you go there? And so that's the process of how it sort of accumulates. Go to Laurie's home. Yes, I go there. Alex Cox is there. Yes. And one thing leads to another. What is a blessing? She says, well, it's when someone is prepared to receive inspiration or comfort or certain words through the laying of hands. And you can imagine, if you're a lonely person, you're afraid. If you're afraid the world's going to end, someone puts their hand on you, it feels soothing. It feels, oh wow, I'm feeling loved. I'm feeling like I belong. Right? Chad said that he would give you a blessing if you went to Laurie's home. Yes. Okay, sorry, I read that. So what was going on at the home? What did you talk about? Then there's a really long pause, and she eventually says she asked Chad to play basketball with her. She said, I felt awkward. Laurie was being flirtatious with him. So Zulema decided to go inside. Chad wanted to go inside too. And that prompted Laurie to say to Chad, oh, are you scared of me? Right? So Laurie was coming on to Chad quite strongly. So again, if you ask the question, who is really pulling the strings here? Right? Who was setting the pace? Let's see what you guys have voted. So Laurie is up to 50%, Chad 23%, and about a quarter of you still saying it's not clear. Is it becoming a bit clearer? Chad came down. He came down, I guess, from Rexburg to be a guest on a podcast with Laurie and Melanie. Chad said that he wanted to take her for lunch. He said he'd had inspiration. And so at a restaurant in Gilbert, Chad said that he had information about one of her prior lives. And there was another moment that was so weird where Zulema was told something by Laurie, but they didn't want Melanie to be present. So you've even got the members that are kind of, they're keeping secrets from one another. I'm going to tell you about your previous life, But no, I need to not tell you about that or whatever. I don't know. Very selective reality, very schizophrenic. So we go on to the next one. Chad and Laurie didn't want Melanie to know what he was going to tell me. He told me it's my second time on Earth. I think I didn't quite hear that accurately. What it was actually about was that she was told about her second life on Earth. I think she was also told that she'd had 4 or 5 lives. And so during her second life, and then at this point, she was really quiet for a long time. She seemed to be trying to remember. She said that she was told that she had been killed at a very young age, raped and dismembered. Now, if you think about it, you kind of a doomsday prepper, you believe the world's going to end, and you're told, you know what, in another life, you were ripped apart, you were destroyed, you died very young. But don't worry, we know the world, and we God, and we'll take care of you in this one. Oh, by the way, Laurie was your mother during that life. So it's almost like saying you owe her your allegiance, doesn't it? But can you see how it's kind of a mind fuckery that's going on? And so Melanie was absent when this whopper was disclosed. And I think the question emerges, why did Melanie need to be absent? What do you guys think? Like, what would Melanie have thought if she heard that Laurie is supposedly Zulema's mother? Well, or was in another life. Was Melanie ever told that Laurie was her mother? Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Star Wars. Luke, I am your father. That's anyway, but with a abbreviation in another life. Oh, okay, got it. Zulema explains how she was educated on the light dark scale. Chad also gave Zulema her rating. So this is where it sort of flatters you. It's almost like you're being read your horoscope. By the way, in another life you were this and that and the next thing, and this is your rating. You know that you like an extremely you're an extremely accomplished being of light. It's incredible. On this rating, you're really near the top. Laurie is above you, but you're very near the top. Can you imagine if she was told something like, "Because according to this rating, you really low down. You like your light is like on barely dim. You are a horrible enlightened being. Like you got a freaking long way to go. Thanks a lot. See you next. I'm out of here." But to be told you're this incredible enlightened being, Laurie's above you, but that's just incredible. Aren't you telling her what she wants to hear? Um, Gloria says that this would make an incredible movie. I don't actually think so because it's all in someone's mind. I mean, the spiritual stuff is hypothetical. It's not, you're not actually seeing it. So it's actually quite difficult to convey terrible stuff in terms of action. Okay, so let's continue. So what was your level? 4.2. Is that high or low? It's very high. What is Laurie's level? It was 4.3. Now, again, you might say, why? What is the point of this? I'm talking about within the scheme of the whole cult. What is the point of these numbers? Well, it's to take the whole messiness of religious faith and boil it down to a number, right? This whole thing of am I saved? Are my sins forgiven? Um, you know, like I'm within this community of people. Where do I fit in? Well, I can tell you right now, you are 4.2, you are 4.7. Get into the line with the rest of the sheep and go, right? Someone is telling you, it's almost like you don't do an IQ test, but someone tells you you're an absolute genius. Really, I'm an absolute genius? Yes, you are. Go and stand over there. Oh, I'm an absolute genius. Hey, nobody told me I'm an absolute genius. Yeah, and then you believe it. You know what I mean? Thanks a lot, Deborah. Thank you. You get what I'm saying? It is flattering to deceive. You get that. Um, People don't like to be told the truth because it's often not what you want to hear, and so people prefer to be told what they do want to hear. That's another way that you end up not being in the real world. Things that you tend to not want to hear or not want to know tend to be real. So she goes on to say, at this point, Zulema was told Charles was a dark spirit. So she's just told, Zulema, you are cheapest, it's incredible. I just see it's like you Neo in the Matrix. The light's just resonating off you. You're this incredible enlightened being. Wow. By the way, there's this other guy, he's a dark spirit. Guys, we need to be careful now, right? And so she's already being caught in the intrigue of all of this. Right. So I can tell you that you are this, but I can also tell you that that person's that. And this is now the dark side of all of this feel good mumbo jumbo, right? And to me, the value of this isn't so much where you do the dry reporting. You say, Zulema said this, Chad said that. It's to say, in your world, in your life, do you know anyone who talks garbage or makes claims like this? Do you also accept unsubstantiated claims? If you're laughing at Zulema or you're laughing at what's going on here, you must be careful because there are predators out there, psychological predators out there, spiritual predators out there all the time that are trying to con you. And they are out there because they're, what do they say? A sucker is born every day. Are you a sucker? Right? You don't want to be a sucker. And that's one thing that this case teaches is the damage that you can suffer for being a sucker, for being sucked into someone else's con job, right? And I mean, you saw exactly the same thing with Alex Murdaugh. You saw a con artist, a very sophisticated con artist, suckering one person after another. And eventually, he doesn't only ruin lives, he literally destroys lives, and eventually it's his own family. There's some intertextuality between that case and this case. He murders his own son. He murders his own wife, right? There seems to be some intertextuality between those two cases as well. But what does it start with? Lying, 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 turning, like treating people like suckers. And the fact is that with the right amount of charm and assertiveness, you can tell a big lie, and people, there are a lot of people who will accept what you say at face value. The lesson with this is don't accept, be a little bit more cynical about what you are told, especially if it's too good to be true, too simple, too big a statement, or if it's exactly what you want to hear. You should be saying what Bruce Banner says. Maybe exactly what I want to hear isn't exactly what I want to hear. Or is it? Do you want to be told exactly what you want to hear? I mean, that's anyway. So Laurie told, let's go back to this. Laurie told Zulema that she got $60,000 from Joe Ryan's life insurance. And you see how that is a kind of a precursor to everything else. Joe dies, and I benefited in a big way. It was so easy. Joe died, and suddenly my life is a lot easier. What if somebody else died? Couldn't my life also be easier? Joe died, and suddenly I got a lot of money. What if somebody else died? Then I could get a lot of money. And then someone does die. Okay, what if somebody else died? Then I could get a lot of money. And then it's this very sick psychology. That's what it appears to be. That's what I think the prosecution are trying to prove, of making easy money out of easy meat, right? Easy money out of easy meat. Is that what happened here? And so, for all this talk about zombies, who are the actual zombies here? are the zombies the people that are ultimately classified as zombies and killed, or the zombies the people who believe that someone else is a zombie, right? So, I mean, with respect, when Melanie was told that someone's a zombie, if Melanie believes someone's a zombie, who's the real zombie in that equation, right? So at the end of March, Laurie said that she wanted a group of us to meet. That's what Zulema said, to show us and teach us. And so we had a meeting in late March. Melanie was there. She said we need to cast out the demon in Charles. So it's like, I'm God, I'm Jesus' messenger. Of all the things we need to deal with, because the world's about to end, I want to deal with my ex-husband, guys. Guys, there's a lot going on. There's war in the world. There's people starving. There's people around the corner that are struggling, suffering. But let's get together. I'm God, by the way. Well, I'm a messenger from God. Let's deal with my ex-husband. How, just it's absolutely ridiculous. And so they want to cast out the demon in Charles, and that then becomes the focus of all their successive meetings. Guys, let's get together. I'm going to get rid of the demon in Charles. Next meeting. Guys, we got rid of that demon, but there's now another demon in Charles. And it's all to do with Laurie. I mean, is Chad saying, well, there's a demon in one of his kids, or in Tammy at this point, right? So she's asked, how do you do that? How do you cast out a demon? And so she says, and it's kind of very this is where the cult, where the reality of the cult thing becomes sort of manifest. So what is the whole cult behavior like in practice? If we want to get practical about it, what are we talking about? And she says, well, we hold hands in a circle, and each person would have a different part to say or do. So everyone gets their role, right? And then she said, who decided who would say what? Laurie. What tool did Laurie ask you to use? Fire. And so Alex also is given a role, and his role is he's a warrior, right? And so someone is giving out those roles. Who do you think is giving out those roles? So again, when you ask the question, who is pulling these strings? Who's deciding what is going to be said, by whom? Where's this all coming from? What do you think the answer is? So let's go back to the poll. 50% say Laurie is the one that is kind of running the show. A quarter of you say definitely Chad, and then another quarter say still not clear. So if the jury have a similar what's the word? If the jury have a similar answer to you guys, if 50% say they think Laurie was behind this, do you think Laurie is going to be convicted? Let me say that again. If the jury have the same 50%, 24%, 27%, what do you think is going to happen in this trial? What are your thoughts? Is Corinna leaving us? She said, I'm still sleepy and without coffee. I actually need to wrap up. It's 11 o'clock at night here. I need to also kind of get going. Yeah, brainwashing. Christy says religion is used to control society. Well, it can be. Certain people do try to do that. Elise says, I'd say Laurie now. I hadn't been following this closely prior. Good. So we've got someone who is starting to get a sense of, you know, you're getting a sense of what's going on, perhaps in a clearer way. Oh, you're staying. Okay, good. Bridget says, I think she'll be found guilty. Gwen says, 50% would be a hung jury, right? I'm actually not sure. As far as I know, if one person can't agree, it's a hung jury. Lenny says, there's no doubt in my mind. Lorraine as well. Well, let's just give the jury a chance to. I mean, it's up to them to decide. But it's interesting to see what you guys are saying. Okay. So anyway, let's continue. Go on to the next thing. So they do a casting, then they do a sealing. So can you see they're using these labels, and it's like, have you ever heard of these words in any other context? Casting. Have you ever heard like Catholics or um, Muslims or any other group of people, Jews, Methodists, um, uh, Buddhists, you know what I mean? Have you ever heard anyone talking about fasting? And then there's also sealing. Have you ever heard of these terms before? Uh, Sharon says, do you think Laurie will testify? It's a really good question. It's very hard to answer because on the one hand, I want her to testify. I really think she shouldn't testify. Um, it's hard to say because she's so chatty with her lawyers. And the other side is she, like, has she ever given an interview? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when JJ and Tylee were missing, did she ever like talk to the media? And when you looked at someone like Jodi Arias, she was willing to give TV interviews. You haven't you haven't really had that impression with Laurie. You had the same with Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony never really gave TV interviews. So I think it's looking like she won't testify. Of course, you could say the same about Alex Murdoch. He didn't give interviews either, although his brothers did on his behalf. Um, I think if she's convinced that she's got an unwinnable case and that it's almost like a back is against a wall, that her only play is to testify, then who knows, maybe she will. If her play is also that she is convinced that she's going to be found guilty, and she wants to minimize the sentence against her, she might want to curry sympathy by testifying. So that's also possible. But I kind of get the feeling that if she's deluded enough to believe what she believed, do you follow me when I say this? If she's deluded enough to believe what she believed, then she's deluded enough to believe that she's going to be found not guilty. Right? And I mean that in the context of if she is guilty, right, then she can be deluded enough to believe that whatever she's going to believe. Do you know what I'm saying? Stephanie, Terry says, I don't see her taking the stand, but she has been taking a lot of notes. That's a very good observation. Silent Murmur says, I fart intermittently. Maybe I misunderstood your question. No, it's casting, not fasting. Where is Stephanie? Stephanie says, where's Stephanie? Nick, LDS, normal people have always been preppers. Okay. Chani says, really appreciate your guiding. Thank you. I was going to see where Stephanie says good night. Anyway, I hope you have a good sleep. I know I'm not actually sure if Stephanie is in Texas or Connecticut, but wherever you are, hope you sleep well. I don't know if you guys know, I actually saw Stephanie when I was in Manhattan and her husband. Looking forward to seeing them again. Okay. Zircon says she might take the stand. I don't know. Interesting. Wendy says, Gloria says, casting is a term used in the New Testament. Not, I think I know what you're talking about, where they talk about casting demons into that. So what happened was, I can't remember who did this, but someone cast a demon that was in someone into a herd of pigs, and then they ran, I think, off a cliff into the sea or something like that. And so someone got the idea that was a thing. Anyway, the point is there's casting, and so it's almost like this cult see their job as only doing this. My job, like, it's like, okay, so what do you so are you a messenger of God? Yes. So what must we do? Well, we need to cast out devils all the time. But what does that actually mean? Well, those people die. Oh, okay. So you don't save those people. Yes, we do. We save them by them dying. Okay. So the casting is taking the demon out. And you would almost imagine, why is that not Satan's work? If Satan puts a demon into someone and then they die and you help them die, how is that God's work? But anyway, that would be a bit of critical thinking. But anyway, so what is sealing? Sealing is making it valid, giving it authority. And what's that? Well, giving authority that Charles was possessed. And so Zulema says to Laurie, why don't you just leave him? And she said, no, I can't. I was instructed to do this. Kind of passing the buck, I guess, to God. I want to just leave him. No, you can't leave him. You must get the demon out of him. Okay. So casting, the way I understand it, is a kind of hypnosis. And so casting fiction as reality and then making it official by having a group consent to it in a group context, right? So in other words, you kind of have this thing of, hey guys, this guy's got a demon in him. And then when everyone kind of agrees with it, it kind of gets sealed. It's like, yes, I can feel that as well. And so everyone agrees that someone's possessed, and then it kind of becomes real. It's a symbolic thing that becomes like, I'm not going to treat you as a person anymore. You've now become whatever. Quite scary, actually. In other words, if you take BS and you have enough people to say BS is actually reality, then for practical purposes, it becomes reality. But is it? If enough people say the same thing, it becomes reality for those people in that group saying that thing, right? But it's not reality. But this is how they make something into reality, right? A little bit like true crime at times. So the three women, this is in Exhibit 52A, include Melanie Gibbs, Zulema, standing back to back, role playing, firing guns. Now, I couldn't do this when I was in that room, but they were basically posing like this. You had three women posing like this, with their hands together, kind of simulating a gun, like that, right? And so you had Zulema, Melanie, and there was a third woman. I don't think it was Laurie. Laurie may have taken the photo. I would have actually asked that question. Who took this photo? Anyway, and so you had three women standing back to back, in this sort of Jerry Bruckheimer type bad boys pose of, like they've got guns in their hands, but they're using their fingers. And they were Melanie, Zulema, and a third woman, right? And what do you think they're trying to say? They're trying to say, well, we'll shoot down the demon, but basically it's we'll shoot down the demon-possessed person. But it amounts to the same thing. I mean, what happened to Charles? What did they try to do with Brandon Boudreaux, right? What was the attempt on Tammy, right? So, yeah, that I just wanted to explain what that was all about. It does sound creepy. It is creepy. Okay, let's go on. Chad called to say the casting out had worked, but then a more powerful demon had taken over Charles, Ned, right? And so can you see how it sucks you in? You take the first little step and then there's a bigger step. No, the demon has become a lot more powerful. Oh, well, then I need to become a lot more powerful. We need to take really serious steps. Oh, but now the demon is even more powerful and it's actually very dangerous. We need to do something. Okay, well, then can you see? Can you see how the mind fuckery actually works? So who was there for the next casting? It was at Zulema's house. Melanie Gibb was there, a few others, also Alex was present. Alex was rated very high. Well, I'm sure he was. Alex was excited to find out, that should be a T, who he was. And I don't think he was that excited about who he was in December when he was expressing serious reservations about everything that was going on. He was sort of saying, have I been played? Am I going to be the fall guy? So right now is excited to find out that he's this incredible creature of light with vibrations that are out of this world, and he's this incredible warrior that's gonna become a leader of men or whatever. Well, not really. You're actually not going to live very long. And so Alex was assigned the role of warrior. So he's told, you're a warrior. Well, what do warriors do? Guess who assigned the role? Laurie. So we come back to the question, who was running the show here? Who was pulling the strings? Who was setting the pace? Who was writing down names in the cult, right? Is it becoming clearer? If someone is possessed by a demon, are they considered dangerous? And so she rambled on for a long time. All of this detail, yes, they are considered dangerous. After getting rid of Ned, Hiplos was next. Hiplos was worse than Ned. They decided to do another casting on Hiplos. Melanie was present. Was Alex on these calls? And there was quite a long pause, and then she just said no. And that was quite a surprise. That no was quite a surprise. Then she says, she was asked, did Alex participate in any of the castings involving the spirit Hiplos in Charles? Very long silence. Then, not that I can remember. Now, bear in mind, Alex is or was her husband. Did Alex know that Charles was possessed by a very powerful spirit? Yes, he knew. During this effort to cast out Hiplos, did Charles pass away? And this is again, in quite a clever legal way, sketching the premise for an intention. In other words, someone decided that someone was possessed and then they died. Someone decided that someone else was possessed and they died. Someone decided that someone else was possessed and then they died. That person deciding that a particular person was possessed, that is an intention. You are expressing, you can say it's a belief, but it's also an intention. It's not just, oh, that person's possessed, let's go and watch a movie. It's not just, oh, look over there, that guy's possessed by something, let's go on holiday. It's, that person's possessed, we've now got to concentrate on him. I'm not going to stop until something happens. Can you see it's showing intention? And it's not only intention, it's intention within context. It's intention at a particular time. It's intention expressed at a time, and then that person dies right then. And it's also not like that person's got a demon. I'm really upset about it. Let's pray. Okay, we finished praying. Let's go on holiday. At 5 years later, the person dies. It's not that. It's that person's got a demon. I'm really focused on it, guys. Let's all think about it. Let's think about it. And then in that period, that person dies. And then the same thing happens again and again and again, right? And so remember what the premise is of this court case. Was Laurie conspiring with others in first what's the thing? Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. In a homicide, right? What do they call it when it's premeditated murder? First degree murder. Sorry, I'm definitely need to get some sleep. So that's really what's being asked here. What did Laurie conspire to commit first degree murder with other people? And so what this is trying to demonstrate is spiritual conversations, symbolic conversations, but that nevertheless indicate, indicate the expression of intent directed to an individual who then later dies, right? Thanks a lot, Fractured Fairy Tales. Thank you. That's a good point. That's well said. Chelsea says you can't make this stuff up, but of course they did, right? The people running this cult were making stuff up to, it's basically, I need money, this person's in my way, make stuff up. I mean, if you think about this is who you were in a past life, and it sounds wonderful, right? That's made up, isn't it? And then I don't like that person. Guess what? Okay, who else don't I like? And I know you don't like. Oh, by the way, that person served under Hitler, right? It's made up, right? It's made up mumbo jumbo. But some of it is I guess biblical. Some of it is anchored in spiritual tenets, I guess. Okay, so let's continue. So this is crazy. This part is really, really crazy. During this effort to cast out Hiplos, did Charles pass away? Yes. When was that? July 11, 2019. I just got to ask, how do you remember that date? Well, because Laurie had a connection with 7-Eleven, right? July 11th is 7-Eleven. Because it was her number. Charles had been delivered. Now, remember when I was doing these tweets, I was just thinking, Jeepers, are we dealing with, like, what kind of belief system is this? Is it numerology now? Like, what is it? Astrology, demonology, or is it witchcraft? Is it Harry Potter, or is it numerology? Like, what are we actually talking about here? And so yeah, you have 7-Eleven, like 9-11, now it's 7-Eleven. And instead of saying Charles was murdered, Charles has been delivered. Like, he's been delivered from evil, I guess. But is that really what happened? Was Charles delivered from evil, or was Charles was the hit on Charles carried out? Did a warrior deliver on his mandate, on his mission? Okay, next one. What did she say happened to Charles on July 11th? So, quite a good question from the prosecutor. What did Laurie say happened? And so she says, she tells the story that Laurie told her, that Charles had come from out of town, I think from Texas, and while he was trying to put JJ in the car, they started arguing over the phone. Alex was there and they argued. Alex tried to protect his sister. and Tylee came out with a baseball bat. How much of that do you believe? First of all, you believe Tylee did come out with a baseball bat? You guys believe that Tylee, to address this, came out with a baseball bat? Did Tylee come out with a baseball bat to hit Charles VALLOW? What do you guys think? Thanks a lot, Mr. I don't think so either. Charles had given Tylee her Jeep. Charles probably didn't like Melanie either, if he knew her, but basically didn't like any of this nonsense. Do you think Tylee did either? Do you think Alex was really trying to protect Laurie from an actual physical threat? So I'm sure Alex was trying to protect Laurie, but in what actual context? And who actually needed to be protected in the situation? Whose life was in danger? Who ended up dead? So Charles took the bat from Tylee. So this is how Charles then becomes the, like, how do you translate this from a spiritual woo thing to, in the real world, it's necessary to take these sort of extreme matters, take these extreme actions, right? And so in this schema, which I don't believe Tylee had the bat, Charles takes the bat from Tylee, and you can almost imagine, oh, so is Charles going to hurt Tylee? And I don't think that's ever on the cards. And so now they're wrestling. Charles and Tylee are wrestling. It's like this father figure wrestling with a helpless young teenager over a bat. And so Alex is like, I need to save the day. I need to be a hero. And so instead of him punching Charles or whatever, he runs into another room, gets his gun, shoots Charles, and that's how he died. Shoots him twice. And so you kind of wonder, would Tylee say the same thing? If you ask Tylee what happened, what would she say? And if Tylee said something, would she be told to say that? And so there's nothing mentioned about shooting Charles, who's such a threat, who's so, who's such a threat to Laurie. I mean, where's Laurie in the story? If Laurie is needing to be protected, she's not even in the story. So there's nothing about shooting him on the ground. I think the other story was that Laurie took, you get the inconsistency. I think Melanie was told that Laurie was struggling with a phone with Charles. In this story, unless I misunderstood, in this story, I don't know who they started arguing over the phone. I suppose that could be Laurie. I suppose that could be Laurie. There might be a potential inconsistency here. Anyway, so Laurie told Zulema that the cops assumed it was self-defense. Well, that's true. They did assume that, but was it? And so once again, now think about this again. We've been talking about reality and being stupidly believing what you're told. The cops are told. I mean, what is more real than someone shot dead on the floor, lying in a pool of blood? What's more real than that? And then being told, oh no, it was self-defense. Oh, okay, you said it's self-defense. It is self-defense. It's the power of persuasion, telling someone something and they believe it. I'm not sure if there's, I don't know if any of this thing about the phone is even true. I don't think so. Okay. So the previous session was about laying the building blocks for Laurie showing a kind of intent, if only couched within spiritual language. And bear in mind, she seems to know that she needs to be cryptic. She's going to make these, she's going to say these things and communicate the way she is. It needs to be cryptic. And are the jury going to appreciate that? And that's why they've got to be, the jury has got to be educated on how this cult thing, how the mechanism works, right? Can you see that it appears that there's a very clear intent to get rid of Charles, right? In other words, Laurie is saying, I'm trying to get rid of Charles. And you could say, no, 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 put a slash there. The demon that Charles is possessed by. And so you might say it again. There's a very clear intent from Laurie expressed over and over again to several people to get rid of Charles. And by the way, in Zulema's diary, she talks about, she has the words get rid of. How do you get rid of the demon? And then she writes like a list of things: by burning, by ejecting, by purging, right? And then remember what she said to Zulema: I need you to get rid of the demon by casting fire onto Charles, right? And so can you see that that kind of amounts to a very clear intent to get rid of Charles? Now, Laurie might go on the stand, and I think this would be her strongest argument, is to say, all of what I did was spiritual. It's not my fault if someone else took that into their own hands and misunderstood what I was actually trying to say, right? But the point is that what the prosecution are trying to lay down is very clear intent to get rid of Charles. It's the one pillar, and the other one is it's expressed at the same time that he's murdered. The context, the timing, and the intent are all there, or all appear to be there. But there's a subtlety, not a lot of subtlety, but there's a subtlety in this case that something is said in a symbolic way that represents something else. Are the jury going to look at that and say, there's a little bit of doubt there. You know, she didn't really say that, and so I'm not sure. Could that be what happens ultimately in this case? Thanks, Karina. You follow what I'm saying? Is that the jury might say, yeah, but she's not technically saying that, so I'm a bit unsure. And you know, how many? 27% of you are saying it's still not clear what's going on. Are you going to have that with the jury? Are the jury going to be saying, you know what, I'm not quite sure. I get kind of what you're saying, but I'm just not quite sure. Well, you could have a hung jury. Okay, that was lunch. There's the Idaho Press that I mentioned earlier. Not a single article, can you believe it? Not a single article in this on Laurie VALLOW, nothing. I thought it might be on the front page. It wasn't even on any page. And then on the same day, from the Idaho Press, you've got this article. So anyway, maybe I'll pick up another newspaper. By the way, it's really hard to find newspapers in America, like, well, certainly where I am now. I'm just trying to find like a local paper, and it's just a couple of magazines. There are very few papers. Anyway, let me go back. So that was lunch, couple of pieces of pizza, and then back to the thing. Did Laurie tell you how she was going to pay for things in Rexburg? So Laurie wanted Zulema basically to quit her job. Now, bear in mind, Laurie herself doesn't have money, and people are falling like flies. And the idea is that the insurance pays out, and that's what's paying for the whole thing. That seems to be what people are accusing her of, or accusing the whole cult thing of trying to do. And so now she wants Zulema to join her, but also leave your job and don't worry, we'll look after you. Really? How are you going to look after her? So Laurie didn't have a job, but she did receive Social Security, and that is what Zulema said. She didn't need a job because she, was getting handouts. Zulema visited Laurie, stayed in Alex's apartment in September 2019. When you visited, did you see Tylee? No. And that's obviously a reference was Tylee. Remember, Tylee was killed before JJ. Was Tylee dead at this point? When you asked where Tylee was, what did Laurie say? She said Tylee needed to be free. Again, can you see how that is symbolic language? It's saying something, but it actually means something else. It's saying something that sounds pretty harmless. Where's Tylee? Tylee needs to be free. And you remember that Chad had said something else, that he wants to be free from being caught under the staircase in the Dudley's house. Well, actually, no, Tylee doesn't want to be free. Tylee doesn't want to be dead. And Tylee did want to be free of the nonsense that was going on at home. And so Zulema doesn't actually know what that means. What does that mean? And so Laurie lifted her hand, and this kind of gives you a little cue as to Laurie can be scary, right? Laurie, you can cross Laurie and start feeling a bit afraid. Laurie can be can smile and laugh and be charming and be friendly, but if you ask the wrong thing, you can cross a line with Laurie. And so she says, what do you mean by that? Tylee needs to be free. So Laurie lifted her hand. And that gesture meant, don't ask. And that's not my words, those are Zulema's words on the witness stand. That she asks a question, and Laurie is like God's messenger, holds up her hand and says, don't ask me, don't ask me that. She told me JJ was being attacked by demons. At this point, Tylee was gone. Tylee was missing. And JJ, now is being attacked by demons. Tylee was attacked by a spirit called, I'm not sure if I heard that right. JJ had a comfort dog called Bailey. Spirits were going into Bailey too. So guess what happens? She gave Bailey away. And I think there's a very simple example. When Laurie says that someone is possessed, that person or animal disappears. That person or animal is gotten rid of. But the other side of that is, aren't these people or animals inconvenient to Laurie? Aren't they expensive, or aren't they obstacles in some way? And is that how the intent actually works? Is that the context of it? And what's the answer to that? Okay. So she's asked, what was JJ doing when you saw him? She said that he was playing with toys, he was playing with other kids in the complex. Did Laurie say how it was caring for JJ now that Charles was gone? No, she said she'd hired a babysitter. Now, I don't think she had the babysitter for very long. And I think she'd also said something about private school, right? And I don't know, there's a part I couldn't hear that she'd bought a subscription to something. But I don't think the babysitter lasted very long. So can you see what happens? Charles dies, and Charles is someone who would occasionally look after Tylee, right? And JJ, I guess. Then so Charles dies. Now there's one less parental figure, and Laurie's very distracted during this time. And then Tylee, who would be the other kind of parental figure, the other person taking care of JJ, then next thing she's gone. And now it's like, well, are you going to be a mother now? You're a single mother now, really, and there's no other parent. The other kind of babysitter's not around in terms of Tylee. Are you going to look after JJ now? No, 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 I'm going to get a babysitter. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to get a babysitter. Well, what are you going to do with JJ? And what are you going to do about the dog? Well, what do you think? What do you think happened? Did Chad come over to Laurie? Yes. Laurie and Chad were very aggressively trying to get me to move to Rexburg. Quite interesting that. I needed to help them build a society there. And I think the reason for this is actually what was actually going on between Chad and Laurie, I think, was causing stirrings in the community. And I kind of get the feeling that they wanted Zulema there to almost be a distraction, almost like pay attention to her, or just not make it so obvious that Chad and Laurie are the couple of the month. It's almost to have someone else to be a lightning rod for gossip or whatever it is, right? No, the dog wasn't killed. No, the dog wasn't killed. The dog was, I think, given to a shelter or something. But the dog was gotten rid of. Okay. How are you supposed to support yourself in Rexburg? And so she said that Laurie told her, don't worry about it. Melanie Boudreau, Laurie's niece, she'll look after you. So here you have Laurie talking about someone else's money is going to look after you on behalf of that person. You kind of get an idea of how Laurie thinks about money and how she thinks about people, how people are the means to an end, how people are perhaps used, right? Emily says it was a trained service dog. Okay, so she also says Melanie has enough for all of us. Melanie has enough money for all of us. Melanie has gotten a lot of money in a divorce settlement. So it's kind of this idea of, you know what, it's hard to work for money. It's a lot easier just to divorce someone or get money through insurance. The last thing I want to do is get a job. You kind of get that impression, right? V Slim says Nick's voice is very soothing. Are you using me as ASMR, or are you interested in what we're dealing with here? I heard that she was getting $4,000 a month. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. Zulema completes the foursome. You got Laurie and Chad, and then you have Alex and Zulema. And you see, as we spend more time in this case, the dynamics are becoming clearer. The intentions are becoming less sort of murky, less difficult to see. The whole gearing is starting to become clearer. And so they were told all their sins were forgiven. I think that is Chad and Laurie told Alex and Zulema all their sins were forgiven. Alex actually started sobbing, according to Zulema. They were told that Jesus was standing right there next to him. You kind of listening to this in court. I mean, it's one thing for me to be telling you this, it's another to hear Zulema saying this. And you know, the jury is sitting there, and it's like, guys, your sins are forgiven. You know what? Jesus is standing right here. And then Alex starts crying. And so, yeah, I was being a little bit sarcastic. Chad and Laurie wanted Alex to marry Zulema. And bear in mind, this is all happening at the time they wanted to get married. And so Zulema's asked, so what did you see in Alex? I mean, she's barely met him, right? What was the attraction? She says, oh, he was really funny. You know, he was like a stand-up comic. We watched movies together. That's basically the sum total of their relationship. He's funny. We watched movies. you rated very high on the radiance vibration spectrum. I am too. Let's get married. Zulema only stayed over for 2 or 3 days in September. Over Halloween, Alex came over to Zulema. They stayed up late, held hands, and kissed. On November 7th, she went to Rexburg. Alex gave her a ring and she got engaged. She didn't see JJ. So, Phil, again, like I'm talking about sheep and zombies. Someone says, I want you to marry him. Okay, I will. But it's not only that, Alex, I want you to marry her. Oh, okay, I will. And you actually often have that in strict religious settings, and it can be quite, I mean, that's one way to feel trapped. Do you remember what day Tammy Daybell was shot? Yes, October the 9th. I'm not sure if I have that date right, but that's what I heard. I was with Laurie the same night Tammy was shot at. Right? That's the shooting, not when she was actually killed. And so this is really fascinating. This is one of the big moments of the day. She's with Laurie, Zulema's with Laurie on the night Tammy shot at. And the question is, did Laurie, so did Zulema's now fiance, Laurie's brother, did he get the mission as a warrior to go and shoot Tammy? And did Laurie give him that mission? Anyway, Laurie had come down. Not quite sure what I've written there. Laurie had come down, I guess, to Arizona and wanted me to go to Melanie Boudreau's. Laurie told me that Tammy had been possessed by a demon. So again, possessed by a demon, and then fire and shooting and whatever. There are 3 people in the story that get shot at. Charles, and he's shot dead. Brandon Boudreau, and he narrowly escapes being killed. And then also Tammy, and then she later does die. And so isn't someone praying, casting fire on them? Well, it ends up being, isn't it like a lot of gunfire? Kimberly says Mr. Boudreau was worth a lot, which is why they kept trying to kill him for insurance. Okay. Laurie needed my help. These are Zulema's words. Laurie needed my help in casting out Viola, Tammy's demon. What do you think that means? So, first of all, her help is to agree to it. I'm going to agree to casting out the demon. But what does it casting out the demon mean? Or doesn't it mean when the demon is cast out, it happens when the person dies? So needing my help means I'm going to agree to and assist you in thinking about this person basically dying. And then when they do die, yes, God answered our prayers. Can you see how the whole system works? How the mind fuckery actually works in practice? Terry says Laurie had no business knowing anything about Tammy. Well, bear in mind that JJ was killed after Charles, right? Okay. And this part really stood out to me. Laurie was scary angry after getting off the phone and finding that Tammy had survived the shooting attempt. And she kind of exclaimed, she can't do anything right. And so there wasn't a lot of information here. Was she getting off the phone after talking to Alex? That's what I've assumed. Finding she had survived. Well, is she Tammy? I think it is. He can't do anything right. Well, is that a reference to Alex? That's what I would have assumed. Given the timing, surely she's not talking about Chad. Who else could she be talking about? And so after Tammy died, they said they were going to be living in Rexburg. Chad would be moving into Laurie's apartment. Can you see how if Chad moves in with Laurie and you have Alex and Zulema, it kind of muddies the waters. You've got sort of two couples that are doing whatever. Anyway, so Zulema actually says, isn't that a bit fast? And so she's asked, what day did you marry Alex Cox? December 1st. Alex Cox was found dead in his apartment 11 days later on December the 12th. And so this is where it gets quite interesting, quite intriguing. So now quite a few people have died. And bear in mind, Zulema's now married to Alex, living with him, I guess sharing the same bed, that she's in his space. What is he like? What is his effect? How is he? And she says Alex was very quiet. He wasn't himself. So Alex seemed to change after they got married. Zulema asked how could JJ be with Kay? So one of the unexpected probably side effects, so as opposed to benefits, one of the disadvantages of Zulema and Alex marrying was that they would now start talking to one another about Laurie and Chad. And it's kind of not a very good conversation where they're both starting to have second thoughts. And so some of the stories they're being told, they're only starting to think critically about it at this point. And they're saying, how can JJ be with Kay if Kay is actually looking for JJ? Like if Kay is going onto television and Kay is being interviewed by the news, how can JJ be with Kay if Kay is looking for JJ? And Alex said, I know, meaning this is potentially very bad. This is like so Laurie probably didn't anticipate that this would become a high profile case, that this would be in the news, that Alex would watch the news, that Zulema would watch the news. And so when it does become high profile, their control over their silly little narratives starts to fall to pieces. Do you see what I'm saying? Where they're able to speak, and that's now reality. Well, now that's been contradicted by, what's actually going on, right? Penelope Mason says, morning, and all fans from the UK. Good to have you here. Really weird being in America and it's like morning, because usually the opposite. I'm usually in the morning when I'm dealing with you guys here. Kimberly says, I think he killed himself to avoid the shame of trial. Possible, but it's also possible that he was poisoned or something else. I mean, we do know that poison is something that was brought up. Where is it? Laurie told a friend that she could always put some pills in her husband's water, right? So Alex is starting to become quiet, he's starting to become worried, he's starting to think about what he's done, what happened. Zulema pressured him and asked him for an answer. What did that mean? What does it mean that, yeah, I know? What does that mean? And so he gave like this cryptic response. He says, either I'm a man of God or I'm not. And so he's starting to actually see the light, the cold light of reality, not the false, fake, fucked up light that he's been getting through this sort of cult narrative. is getting this other sense of the real world. And so guess what? The very next day, he's dead. He said, I think I'm going to be the fall guy for this. So it really is, I think I'm going to be the fall guy for this. He's starting to realize that something really fucked up has happened, excuse my French. And did he communicate that to Laurie or Chad? Did he say, what is going on? Okay. On screen 4. So I actually made a sketch of this. I'm going to put that on. I'm going to quickly get that so I can show you. Give me a second. Which Toby was here? I've been sent a couple of pictures of Timmy, and he seems to be doing okay. He seems to be comfortable and so on. So on screen, I put 4 ellipticals, some with circles inside. Looked like a bad version of Yggdrasil, the tree of life in the whole Thor narrative, the Norse mythology. I didn't manage to put that on paper, but it was just basically looked like 5 eggs and other squiggles. But then I did, and that sounded very complicated and very stupid at the same time. But then I did manage to write, to copy this down. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? So it's not me that is doing a very silly copy. This is what it looked like on the screen. You saw like a bunch of circles. The top circle kind of looks like a child's drawing of a sun. Beside every number is like, so beside every circle is kind of a number, and it kind of goes 1, 2, 3, I guess, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. The bottom number is a 6, arrows showing downwards, and so on. And so this is the kind of thing that Zulema had written in her diary. So it's these kind of clumsy caricatures of how people are classified, right? And that's just one example. There were other ones as well. And it's just like you're looking at this and you're like, see, people's lives hanging on the balance based on that garbage, based on that. Like, is this like kindergarten level? Like, what? I don't know. It's just, if you can fool someone with this level of whatever, anyway, so that's just a version of one version of what we saw on screen. These were pages out of her diary. There were like 11 pages. There was also a verse that reads, "He gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out." Do you remember I've been saying all along that this case is about power? It's about someone like Zulema who feels a bit lonely, feels a bit discarded, feels a bit like she doesn't belong. And then she wanders into this group who tell her that she's rated one of the highest celestial beings on the planet, and Laurie's a kind of Christ-like figure, and Laurie used to be her mother, and all of this stuff. And suddenly she belongs to this group who are going to save the world. Okay, well now I'm actually really, you know what I mean? And so they take this Bible verse, this one in particular, I think it's Matthew 8 verse 16, and they take it totally out of context, and they basically say this Bible verse is all that we need to be doing constantly. I will get power if we cast unclean spirits out, right? Do you see that? If you take this one Bible verse, and it's like he gave them power against unclean spirits. So it's like, so the more unclean spirits you cast out, the more power you're going to get. And in some twisted logic, that actually kind of makes sense. If you like take this Bible verse to be like the absolute wisdom of the universe, right? Janet says, I still think they believe they really didn't kill anyone. They just pushed them forward to their next life. Okay. Okay, so we go into the next one. That's from Matthew 8, verse 16. But there was another Bible verse as well. I think Matthew, I don't know, I'm not sure what it was, Matthew 10, verse something. Exhibit 8 shows typed out scales. So it was kind of a similar thing to the book, the sketch, but it was now typed out. And I guess it's a spiritual version of your power as an influence, except in a spiritual sense. Anyway, some more sarcasm there. So you kind of saw a document that had names on it and numbers on it. And a lot of those names and numbers basically represented that someone had gone dark. And so it is effectively a death list. That's also written down proof in a sense of someone's expressed intention, expressed beliefs. Next, I don't know what this was about, a photo of 4 ladies side by side at a conference. And yeah, that was basically the end of the day. I really struggled because it was just the same nonsense over and over again. I really found it hard to care about it, to be honest. I did say my impression is that the content of the cult, so you might say, I don't understand why you could believe this stuff, but that's not really what's going on here. The more important thing is the sense of belonging. That's why they are there. A sense of being valued and being part of something. So the thing that is bringing them together isn't the meat and potatoes of the details. It's like, I don't care about the details. I don't care about the facts. I don't care about the Bible verse. I care about belonging to a group, and I'm being valued, and you care about me, and that's all I care about. You see what I'm saying? And so the dangerous thing about this whole thing is you take away someone's critical thinking, and they basically become a tool for someone else to use potentially nefariously. Is that what happened here? Yeah, I couldn't help thinking the judge does sound like Pedro Pascal. The prosecutor sounds like Camille Vasquez. So anyway, she's asked, how is casting different to praying? Casting is getting rid of evil spirits. What is Alex's gift? He was a warrior. Alex's sole purpose on earth was to protect Laurie. Did Alex believe this? Absolutely. After Alex shot Charles, Zulema thought Alex didn't seem badly affected. Alex told her, Zulema, he was a zombie. So that shows you that's really good evidence that he was told that someone was a zombie and then he shot them. He killed them. Laurie said that JJ was going to have a very short life. That's also giving us an idea of Laurie's intentionality. Can you see how they're building the case of intentionality? This is a really important point, and I think this is the very last, this is like the closing statement. Who benefited from Chad, JJ, and Tylee's deaths? Actually, how it was asked was, who benefited from Chad's death? And then the answer was Laurie directly, and eventually Chad from Zulema. Who benefited from JJ's death? Laurie directly and eventually Chad. Who benefited from Tylee's death? Laurie directly, and at this point the defense objected, but she kind of managed to make her statement. And so that is the bottom line. Whatever the good, evil mumbo jumbo, it's you die and I get more money, right? The bottom line is basically that you have this weird orchestration. You've got all of this nonsense, all of this kind of, this labyrinth of seances and castings and magical things going on and people holding hands and all of this, stuff. But the bottom line is somebody dies and then you get their money, or somebody dies and they're no longer in your way. As far as I know, when Tammy died, Chad inherited her life insurance, right? So you seem to have a psychology of you die and I get more money, and then you've got to say, how biblical is that? Like, is that like is that kind of like divine inspiration? You die and I get more money. Is that something that you really should want to believe in? Is that something you want to be associated with? Hey, do you want to join my cult? You die and I get your money. That's how the cult works. You die and you want to join us. But if you kind of turn it into, you are this great figure and you rated on this scale, and in another life you were a princess. Oh, that's really nice. But by the way, you die and we get money. Anyway, so Zulema is excused. I really struggled to pay attention to the cross. At this point, the judge said that he was concerned about comments from the gallery, and I think things like chuckling, snorting, scoffing. The jurors could obviously hear that and probably felt it themselves. I mean, the jurors are supposed to not say anything. There's one of the few tweets I've highlighted from Nate Eaton. Nate is doing a really good job. I actually saw him. He was obviously in court, so I otherwise didn't see him. But one point, I was, I think, standing in the queue after lunch to get back into the building, and Nate came right out the door, like the revolving door. And anyways, he says Laurie was very chatty with the attorneys today. She's smiling back and forth between Jim and John. And yeah, she was definitely not that upbeat when Melanie testified. Melanie Gibbs. She seemed not downbeat, but she seemed cautious and careful and, not necessarily in a good mood. So maybe it's to intimidate Zulema. Maybe that's why she acted in that way. Whenever a taxi, Uber picks me up, they ask me, what I'm doing here. What are you doing in Boise? And I sort of feel like Nate is doing what needs to be done. Nate's covering this trial, and most of the people here are only interested in Nate's coverage. So I think the answer to that is, what am I doing? Is I'm learning. I'm experiencing the apparatus of one particular court system firsthand, and that's good enough for me, right? I'm not sort of motivated by views or whatever. I'm sort of motivated by, I want to get a better idea of the American justice system in a high-profile case in practice, and it has been very interesting. And I really had some nice conversations today with people that I was sitting next to. Really interesting. So, I'm also, as a person who's written dozens of books on true crime and sat in courtrooms in South Africa, and I've been on my own journey. It's been very interesting. It's been a very interesting episode, seeing the people and almost being a quiet spectator to this case. You know what I mean? And that's definitely been interesting. I'm learning, I'm growing, and yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I'm not going to go through the rest of this. Funny enough, the defense did ask her, "You're not a very gullible person, are you?" He said, "Well, I believe in the goodness of people." Um, and then, but this is all about people infected with evil spirits. Like, I believe in the goodness of people. Yeah, but that one's demon possessed, and that one, and that one, and that one. Okay. She says she has become less trusting of people since this incident. One does wonder whether this case is going to affect other believers in their, let's call it naivete, in their, if it's going to make their faith more or less credible or realistic, if that makes sense. Zulema is confronted with one of its sketches, asked why she drew it, she can't answer. There's a page in her diary under cast out of the words burn. How do you cast someone out? Burn, expel, purge, eject. Yeah. And I think she was asked, how do you verbally burn someone? And then she was asked, does it have anything to do with physical burning? No. That's from the defense case. And then I just provided one Bible verse here. That's the other one that we didn't see. So he also wrote down Matthew 10, verse 1 as this one. And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits. So this is, these verses are being drilled into the heads of Chad and Laurie's adherents. He gave them power. He gave them power. Well, to do what? To cast out spirits. So that's what they're doing all the time. Cast out spirits, get power. Cast out more and more spirits, get more and more power. And so they've taken one thing, it seems to me, out of the Bible, and made it into their entire sort of religion. That's the impression that I get from that. You know, there's a last look at Melanie Gibb. Do you think she's a bit embarrassed about her involvement with Laurie? You think she's proud of her involvement with Laurie? Do you think? What do you think? Do you think she wishes she'd never met Laurie? Okay, so that is it from me. So I'm actually really looking forward to putting up some content on Team Peachtree that is not about cults and lying and death and demons and destruction, but instead about traveling and the beautiful landscape and about, I mean, I've been eating these delicious oranges from California. You know, the food that I'm eating in Idaho, the funny, curious, silly, enjoyable experiences that make you feel glad you're alive. I'm kind of looking forward to sharing some of that on Team Peachtree. I'll also be doing Van Gogh Letters episode, what's it, 53, 54, sometime over this weekend. The question remains, where do you think I'm going to go from here? Am I going to go to Moscow, Idaho, which is north, about 300 miles, or am I going to go to Rexburg, which is sort of part of the story, which is, I think, a little bit further south, or am I going to go to the Grand Tetons, where Gabby Petito died? That's actually in, I think it's in Wyoming. Where do you think I'm going to be going? Run the World says Washington. Padlock says, can you talk about your stay in Idaho? You mean now? Alina says, go to the Grand Tetons. Gloria says 1122. Religion was a mask. Yeah. You kind of get the feeling that Laurie was actually hiding behind a mask of religion. How much did Laurie really believe? Terry says, if you go to Wyoming, please take the long way. Don't go over Teton Pass in the winter. What's the long way? Like via what? What can I tell you about my stay here? It's astonishing how different today was from yesterday weather-wise. Yesterday was cold, like everywhere was white. It was like looked like Christmas. And then the next day is completely sunny, and all of that snow is gone. And in fact, there's less snow the next day than there was even before it snowed the previous day. My first impression of Boise wasn't terribly positive. I kind of thought it was, yeah, I don't know kind of how to say it, but the more you get around, the more you get a sense of the huge mountain range skirting the city. And what's nice about it is it's not choked up with traffic. There's some nice neighborhoods. There's some nice parks as well. The people are friendly. Yeah, they're definitely friendly people. I've had some really nice conversations with the locals. My very last Uber driver was a pretty cool cat. Actually, the driver to the court is quite a cool cat. Yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to say. There is actually quite a lot to say, but it's 20 minutes past midnight. I think I'll talk a little bit more about it when I'm where I'm going to tomorrow. I think that'll be a good time to talk about it. Anne says, go to Moscow in July. Okay. Elise says, downtown is clean and there are some beautiful areas. I still want to get some good photos of the Capitol building. I'm quite impressed with the court setup. It's run like quite a tight ship. I quite like the way this case is being presented. So just in terms of that, I'm quite impressed. So far, so good. Alina said, I think you need a nature break. Well, we're going to see, you guys are going to see, you'll see where I am this time tomorrow. That's true. They say Boise is the new Portland. There's apparently a lot of people streaming to Boise and Bozeman. It's becoming quite, these are becoming quite popular cities for Americans to live in. It feels quite safe here. There's quite a lot to say just on that. But I think I'll save that maybe for another day. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining me. Thanks a lot for the super chats. Welcome also to our newest member, Amy Carter. And yeah, if you haven't joined Team Peachtree, make sure you do. I'll be taking photos, taking some video, and putting that up on Team Peachtree, the sort of road trippy stuff. I've hired a vehicle and it's parked outside right now, and I'm going to be, you know, enjoying American, by road, by vehicle, and that should be quite interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. A little bit nervous, but I did manage to get from the airport here without too much fuss. Okay. Cherry, thank you for moderating. Iceland, thank you also for being here. Hope you found this analysis worthwhile. I'm going to be covering the trial probably for another 8 court days or so. I'll be here until, have a look, just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sorry, 7. I'll be covering another 7 court days. So we'll see what happens during that period. Okay, so that's it from me. If you're in the States, I hope you guys have a good sleep. Get some sleep, get some rest. If you're elsewhere, if you're in the UK, South Africa, Australia, have a great Saturday. I guess your weekend is starting. Yeah, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to mine. And you guys will be sharing in some of it. And so I look forward to seeing you guys there. Take care, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Good night, sleep well, sweet dreams.